You're muted.
Hey.
Salty.
Hold on a minute. Hang on. I gotta mute out this other thing here.
You're muted.
Hang on. Okay.
Salty.
Hold on a minute. Hang on. I gotta mute out this other thing here.
You're muted.
Okay. Now, is that better? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we don't have triple echo. That was
Well, the
psychedelic.
laptop's sitting here, and I had it pulled up there too, not thinking, and yeah, I was like, something's got to go here. So,
Oh,
it's
what a
good.
day.
I know, right? Good to hear from you. We're glad you got home safely and made it through the day safely.
Hi, Butterfly. Thank you so much for coming on board and modding for us.
Thank you. We certainly couldn't do it without her.
Absolutely not. There's no way that my brain can get pulled that many directions at once.
No, she is a vital part to what we do here.
Yes.
So it was a long day for everybody, and I could imagine what it was like just being there in person with the energy level, you know.
Yeah. It was a weird, almost passive aggressive energy level.
Yeah.
Because everybody was pretending to be polite and some people were not.
Yeah, that's what I was hearing, unfortunately, coming up out of some of the reports this afternoon. So people need to calm down and be nice.
Yeah. Well, there are lots of reports that said this was not the circus that everybody expected it to be. And there are probably some reasons for that. And then there being a nearly full moon, probably.
Yeah, I think I know I'm feeling that full moon energy. I imagine there are others doing the same thing, feeling it as well.
All right. So it started off interesting because the last time I went to a hearing was the August 1st. Well, the last time I went to a morning hearing was August 1st. And I got there at 6:00 in the morning because Bob had said that he got there at like 6:15 and there were a bunch of people in line. I'm like, well, I better get there at 6. Got there at 6. I was fifth in line. Plenty of room in the courthouse. This go around was not the case at all. So,
yeah. I know that picture you sent this morning. I was like, man, as early as it was, there was already that line forming and everything. And
yeah.
and I saw a clip on Court TV and I could see the first few people in line. I was like, oh man, really? So
there were people that literally spent the night there sleeping on the concrete. So apparently, and it wasn't publicly released, the county commissioners made a ruling that people could camp out overnight on the courthouse steps. Yes, we were all told no camping out overnight. So in other words, come early. What exactly does early mean? We don't know, subject to interpretation. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to get there like 4:20, 4:30. And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, I probably ought to get there a little bit before that. So set my alarm for 3 a.m., do my thing, get out the door a little bit late. And then I decided not to take the Hoosier Heartland. I went Old State Road 25 through Americus, which is a lot more peaceful drive. And got there probably nearly 10 minutes late. It was like 4:05, between 4:05 and 4:10. And those pictures, like,
yeah,
it's there were people that were directly in front of me that said that they got there like right at 4:00, and they were 32nd, 33rd, 34th in line. I was 35th. And we knew from last night that they were going to give about 30 seats to the public. So, but there were other people in line that are like, well, there might be some media in this line, so we don't know for sure that the count's accurate.
Well, I heard there were people doing some cutting in line and this, that, and the other, and things like that. I know it got annoying to several several that were there. I did get to hear Julie Melvin come out this afternoon and talk to Criminality a little bit about that. It's, it, I don't know, man. It's just they created this craziness, around this case. Not us, the state did by doing this foolishness, and I get it, your courtroom's small and all that good stuff, but you should have accommodated that. We like over in the Koberger trial, it was moved to Ada County because it is a larger courtroom and they anticipate a large turnout for the trial. So I don't, they just didn't want to accommodate anybody for anything. I think they were just doing what they could to shut everybody out. It seems like,
Well, no. It is a tiny courtroom. Like you would not believe the number of people that walked into that courtroom and were like, "Oh my gosh, we cannot believe." So there were the 72 seats, and 20 of it was for the families, and 12 of it was for press, and the press had to go through a lottery system to get theirs. So that left about 30 seats for the public. And I was about 35th in line, and people are like, that doesn't mean you won't get in. But like right before we went in, so they opened the doors at 8:00 and they opened the courtroom at 8:30. But at about 7:50, maybe 7:55, the lady deputy comes out. She goes, "Listen up, everybody. This is how it's going to go. We have 24 seats for the public." And all of us that are like back in the 30s are like, "Oh, son of a." But we went through all the steps anyway. We waited for the extra few minutes because we're already there. I mean, we'd already spent 4 hours in line in the freezing cold. Well, not technically not freezing. When I got there at a little bit after 4, my phone said it was 40 degrees. By the time the sun started coming up about 7:45, it had dropped to 36. So it kept getting colder and colder.
Wow. I would have been so cold. I don't know if I could have made it. Like, I'm in Florida, so the wind blows, I'm cold. Like, I'm cold now. So I thought about you guys out there that early and knowing it was how cold it was, and 24 seats for the public is insane. I mean, I understand you need to get the families in there. That's priority, and I understand that. But just only having 24 public seats available, that's not a public trial.
Here's the thing: is the families didn't take all of their seats. I
didn't figure they would.
But the problem is you can't really mix and mingle those because you're talking about families from different sides. And I get the feeling, and I'm not going to dive into any rumors or anything.
Yeah.
But that like Abby and Libby's families don't necessarily get along all that well.
Yeah, you kind of pick up that vibe as over the years. Like there's maybe a disconnect, may be the wrong word, but maybe they have different feelings on the case. You know what I mean? I think it might be some of that going on, which is normal and natural. But I'm like you, there's no reason to dive into the rumor side of it. But
right.
I felt that as well over time. Just like, with Carrie, Libby's mom, and I don't even know if she was able to make it there. I had heard that she was having trouble getting there financially, so I hope that it worked out for. Did you happen to see Carrie there, or did you
say Libby's mom?
Yes, Libby's mom, Carrie.
Yeah, she was right in front of me in the afternoon session. Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm glad she got in because they've done a lot to, not the family. I won't say the family's done a lot because I don't know their personal ins and outs, but I know how the law enforcement felt about her because I've seen the interviews and how they've shut her out at times. So it's important that she gets to be there. She has every right to be there, just like the rest of the family has the right, in my opinion. So good for that. Welcome in, chat. Thanks for coming in and joining us. Joe, are you there? Am I the only one? Can you guys hear me?
How's that? Is that better?
Oh, okay. I can hear you.
Okay. So some people brought in camping chairs and blankets and were like sitting in those for the whole morning. and that's great. And then right before we were let in, they took them back to their car and were allowed to come in and get back in their place in line, which that makes
Oh,
sense. That makes
yeah,
sense. But if I had known that, I would have done the exact same freaking thing. Because
yeah.
I've got tons of folding chairs and blankets that I could have brought, and a Sub-Zero sleeping bag.
Oh, hey,
But
if you go back, you'll be prepared. We got what is a month long. They calling for this trial to be like a month
oh my
long. So
goodness,
if you ever decide to go back, you'll know now what you can
right,
and cannot do.
right,
And I was a little. There were several of us that have been following the case for years, and who know a lot of the YouTubers that have covered in the case and things of that nature. And it was when I saw one of the first people in line, I was like, man, really? And that person got in, and we were like, shit, of all people, um, to let in that courtroom. But I guess it's their courtroom. They're going to do what they
right.
want.
And they're not going to go down the line and check people's IDs and criminal histories and background check and all that. I mean,
Yeah, well,
they're
if you make a public threat to the suspect, you shouldn't be allowed in. But it is what it is. Goal's going to let who she wants in, I guess.
yes, and it is her decision, and the seating is her decision too. Like all of the deputies there are like, hey, we have no say in this. We have no say. So we had to deal with it, and we kept saying, I kept saying, we'll know when we know whether we get in or we don't. So get let in at 8 o'clock, go up and stand in line in the same order on the third floor, right outside of the courthouse room. Wait for another half
Yeah,
hour till they open those doors, and then they just open them and people start going in. And then it's not really a free for all, but it kind of is, because if the first people go in, like take their time finding a seat, somebody behind them may already snatch a seat before they find
yeah,
a seat. But so they let like 40 of us in, and there's like 16 of us standing with no seats. I saw the very last seat get taken right in front of me. I'm like, ah. So Liggett is at the door and he goes, y'all realize if you're standing, we don't allow standing during court. So y'all got to get out of here. So we did, and went down and talked to, just talking amongst ourselves. Somebody had a great idea that after, either right before or right after opening statements, that the witnesses who were in the courtroom were going to be separated out and couldn't stay in the courtroom for the rest of the trial. They can't listen to other witnesses' testimonies,
exactly.
right? So
Right.
maybe some seats will open up. So we all kind of formed our own little line down on the first floor and waited and waited and waited and waited. And like probably about 10 o'clock, what's Andrew saying? Or what's Dustin saying?
I'm watching that. I'm seeing the same thing. So Dustin is saying they are live covering the Delphi case on Apple TV and Hulu TV, and that he's got like 3 people there covering. Is that what I'm understanding? Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Hulu TV and Apple TV. They're
Right.
covering it as well, and good, because the more coverage and with people who are in there, the more I think. Even on Twitter today, there were people who you don't understand what we are talking about, even, or why we have questions. And it's like, how can you not see that we have questions, about the case? And I think after some of the testimony heard today and what was brought out in opening statements alone, people were like, wait, what? So I think the more
Right.
coverage that can be out there, the better it is, because we know how limited this coverage is actually being done, how they're trying to control it. So yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. So speaking of the more media coverage we have in there, while we're waiting down on the first floor and forming our own little line that maybe gets secondsies, a deputy comes around the corner from behind, and he's got a bag full and a handful of cameras. And we're like, oh, and it's a brown paper bag. And somebody goes, oh, is that lunch? And he shakes his head no. And somebody goes, oh, is that evidence? Shakes his head no. Come to find out, there were television reporters and news reporters off to the side where the family and the jury were being brought in that took
Yeah.
pictures of the family and jury.
Well, that was what was reported earlier. There was reports that it was some of them were from the Associated Press. Then it was like another from another agency. And then one of the people actually came on Twitter and said, that's not what I was doing. Like, I sat my bag down with my camera, but I don't think, am I going to believe that or not? I don't know. If you're going to get a shot, yeah, I guess they're going to try, but they probably shouldn't have. But we were hearing those reports come out that their cameras were confiscated, Sims cards destroyed. They weren't getting the stuff back. Is that what you
Yes.
witnessed there? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, he was confiscating. The Judge Gold had their cameras confiscated. People said they were going to destroy them. And I don't know if that means destroy the SIM cards or if that means destroy the cameras. I have a hard time believing that, but you never know with Judge Gold. You never know. Anyway, so that was the interesting tidbit while we waited. So get there at a little after 4 in the morning, get let in at 8 o'clock. So standing outside in the freezing cold for 4+ hours, go through the security checkpoint, have my smartwatch taken off, and had to go in the general box. Then waiting in line for another half hour, then all of us filing in the courtroom, and then 16 to 20 of us filing back out, and waiting for another few hours. And about 10 o'clock, 10:30, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to wait anymore. I really don't know.
Yeah.
So, because this is going to be a whole day wasted. But it ended up not being, because we ended up going up and talking to the deputy that was in charge of letting people in and out. And he said, after lunch, everybody who got a spot, oh, yes, Miss Deanna, it was totally worth it. 100%.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that after Salty goes over the morning notes. Then we'll get to the afternoon session too. I say, was it worth it? Yes, it was worth it today. Am I going to do it every day for the next 6 weeks? Hell to the no.
I don't blame you. I mean, it's going to be rough for, the ones that are there, that are going to try to be there every day covering it. If they can even get in from day to day, to be guaranteed to get in each and every day. I know, like we all know, I think most of us know by now that Lawyer Lee is there for the entire month. That's what she says. She's going to be there for the entire month. So, I hope that she's at least allowed in every single day if she's going to be there that long, if she's committed to being there that long, I hope she gets in so we can get good reports from her, because I've followed her for a long time. Always get good. I've never had anything come out of her channel that I didn't go, about. You know what I mean?
Yep.
She's always spot on. So, yeah.
She is so smart. And guess what?
She really is. Yeah.
Guess what? She sat down 2 seats from me, and we talked for a while today, and I got to meet her and shake her hand.
Oh, good for you, because she really, I love her. I mean,
yes,
I'm deep in the Crystal Rogers case, and she's one of the only people on YouTube who regularly cover Crystal Rogers. So anytime she's on with Crystal Rogers updates, I'm in there. So I like her a lot.
But with people like her and Andrea Burkhart and Bob in there, I really don't need to be in there. I mean, my mind isn't anywhere near as sharp as theirs, especially legal wise. But and honestly, so well, we'll get to the post morning craziness afterwards. So we didn't get in for the morning session. So let Salty, you go ahead and take it and start covering your notes of what happened in the morning session, the opening statements, and the first. Was there just one witness? Was it just Becky?
Well, Becky was in the morning, and from what I'm understanding, the other ones were in the afternoon, and I'm assuming you saw those. Like
yes.
Derek, Sherman, and Kelsey were in the afternoon, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And I took my notes, guys, from people that were in the courtroom as they were coming out and trying to get the updates to us as quickly as they could. And I tried to fact check what I was writing down, because I really don't want bad information out there. And it's already so difficult with the way this is. So I know that opening statements, the prosecution that was given by Nick McClelland, and he only spent about 13 to 15 minutes on his opening statements. And the key takeaways were, as far as he's concerned, Richard Allen is the bridge guy. He is also the man captured on Libby's phone. Now these are what he's stating to everybody. That bridge guy or Allen confessed to things only the killer would know. The bullet found came from Allen's gun. The jury would hear about a very gruesome and graphic crime scene. They will hear from 3 witnesses who will say they saw Bridge Guy. The girls, now trigger warning on some of the stuff we do talk about. You guys know that's not always pretty, and it is what it is. So the girls' throats were cut. Libby was nude and covered in blood, and Abby was dressed in Libby's clothing. Then he says that the remaining of the clothes were found in Deer Creek, which there are photos of that out there, and that's Abby's clothing. And it looks like the tie-dye shirt to me, and at least one of the Nikes was also in the water, which I believe the Nikes belonged to Libby. So Libby's phone was found under Abby, along with her one shoe. So one of Libby's shoes was under Abby, and one was in the creek. And then Abby was dressed in Libby's clothing. Now, I got to, we've all heard that and throughout the documents and everything. So if you go by the timeline, if they were both undressed at some point, you were trying to get out of there the way Nick claims, you're going to take the time to have one redress herself. Didn't make any sense. So we'll get into that later. Okay, so the defense had their chance to get up and do their opening statement, and Andrew Baldwin did that, and it took him about an hour. So he was up there a lot longer than Nick was. So Andrew says that they will focus on inconsistent witness descriptions. Law enforcement investigation was messed up from the beginning. We have learned now through his statements there was hair intertwined in Abby's hand. It had a root with DNA. Possibly matched Libby's family member, but not Richard Allen. Now, more has come out about that throughout the day. And allegedly, that hair was never tested by law enforcement because they assumed that it was probably from a family member. But it was a female hair. We know that now. And from what I'm understanding, they just started testing that hair recently. And I guess that's how they determined it wasn't Rick Allen. But, that's setting up. Now, the defense is the one that did come out and say that the hair appeared to come from one of Libby's family members. And if that's the case, they're setting up and showing a botched investigation from the beginning, because why would you not test that immediately, especially if it's intertwined in her hand, because that's way more than just a transfer from clothing. Because if we remember back, Kelsey said that when the girls got out of the car, she's like, grab a jacket, grab a sweatshirt, guys, it's cold. They both grabbed something out of the car and put it on. So it could have been Kelsey's hair transferred over to Abby's hand, but would it be intertwined in her hand at that point? You know what I mean? So that's something we'll learn more about as the as the trial moves forward.
Yeah, there's an interesting question on it. So Kelsey testified in the afternoon, and Andrew Baldwin did pose an interesting question to her in cross. We'll get to that later.
Okay. So the investigation was messed up from the beginning, and went over the hair. The defense believed, now this is key because the defense feels like a lot of us did trying to figure out how this all went down. The defense is going to lay out where they believe the girls were kidnapped and taken away by a car and then brought back and left on the banks of Deer Creek in the early morning hours. Before daylight and once the area was cleared out from searchers, I guess. Because we know this official search was called off about 11:30 the night before, but some of the family and friends stayed out for several more hours, but they weren't out there all night long, from what we understand. The defense also claims that phone data will show that Rick Allen left the area around 2:15 p.m. That Snapchat video, or the video of Bridge Guy, allegedly occurred at 2:13. So there's a discrepancy there on that. And I'm sure that, the defense will go into that more as time moves on. The state mishandled evidence and had different opinions other than the FBI had. State's timeline doesn't fit with the security video, and I'm assuming that's from the Hoosier Harvester, because we know that that camera saw Kelsey's car go by. It sees Betsy Blair's car go by. It should see Rick Allen walking by, going toward his car, if that's what happened. So they're going to use that as a discrepancy in the timeline. Libby's phone was active 12 hours after the girls were missing, which we all heard that from the latest filings. No DNA or social media or forensic evidence linking Allen to the crime. And that's about the gist from the opening statements. We also learned from testimony that 2 weapons were used. One was serrated and one was not. So if you're a lone wolf, are you taking 2 different weapons out there with you? I mean, that's another rabbit hole there. The female hair found in Abby's hand was never tested until recently. There's a discrepancies about one of the witnesses' statements. So 2019, according to law enforcement, the statement was the witness saw the man walking down 300 North wearing a blue jacket, muddy and bloody. But yet the defense says, well, in 2015, that same witness's recorded statement doesn't mention blood. It mentions mud, and it was a tan jacket, not blue. And that would have been a discrepancy there with that information from that same witness, which we had heard that in the past. And Becky was the first one to testify. And she described the girls' relationship and how, the friendship they had, and told us a little bit more about Libby and who she was. Then after lunch, the witnesses came in, and I believe that's where you come in. Now there was let me look at this other page and look what Barbara was reporting. These are coming. This one is some stuff that was being reported by Barbara McDonald after the morning session. Unspent bullet was never excluded from matching other guns that were tested, including the homeowner at the end of the bridge, which the initials are BW. That person arrived home at 3:30 in the afternoon, and they owned a 40 caliber gun. It was in their vehicle. Now, that person arrived home at 3:30 at the south end of the bridge. That's where the private drive leads to, right? Is their home. And according to McClellan, Richard Allen's purpose of abducting the girls and going down the hill was to essay them, but it was interrupted when this person got home at 3:30. Well, if they didn't get home until 3:30, the bridge guy video starts at 2:13. That's like an hour after that starts. So they would have already been down the hill, across the creek, and over in the other woods, in my opinion. So then the state's new theory was that like I just explained, that it was interrupted. But yet bridge guy video started at 2:13. And the discrepancies about the witness statement. Now the witness statement, I believe that she saw the man like at 4 p.m., which was still after Allen left the area, as far as we know, and that's about the gist of the morning stuff. And then they took a break and went to lunch, I believe. Then you guys came back from lunch, and then you had a brief break after that, I think.
Well, well, there was a morning break, and we weren't allowed in during the morning break. Some people tried, and they were rejected.
Really?
But then that's when Becky testified, right? Do you have anything on Becky's testimony?
I just a little that she explained the girls' relationship and about Libby, and that's really about all I know on that, because it started as things come out. I do have let's see. Let me pull this up real quick on
I'm
the
I'm
laptop.
I'm sure it was probably very similar to the afternoon questions. They were very foundational questions.
Yeah,
Where did you live? Where did the girls go to school?
yeah,
What were their activities? How close were they? How close were you to them? And then they drill down on the events of April 13th. You know, when did you first hear that they were missing? And then what did you do? And where did you go? And at what time? So I'm sure that's probably a lot of her testimony is very similar to the afternoon
yeah.
question.
Yeah, that was about what we had heard that her testimony was about, and just establishing that the girls, were going out to the bridge, and we're going to be picked up later in the afternoon by Derek. And like I said, I know Derek, and then we're called to the stand in the afternoon.
Yes.
And I know Derek did tell them, what he made for breakfast for the girls. And so we know the girls ate that morning. Now, the only reason like that could be important is because if you go and do your autopsies, you can determine the food content and kind of help establish a timeline of time of death. You know what I mean?
Right.
So other than that, I really don't know much about the afternoon testimony except what is just coming out as we were getting ready to go live and stuff.
Well, I've got 8, 9, 10, 11 and a quarter pages of notes. So we can talk about that in depth.
Yeah.
But first, the circus that became a Benny Hill skit. You remember Benny Hill?
Oh gosh, I do. Me and my sister we used to watch him laugh.
And that's what we were doing in that courthouse at the behest of the Carroll County deputies. And actually, a lot of them are not Carroll County deputies. They got called in from out of county, and you could see their different patches and their different uniforms. I mean, the actual number of Carroll County deputies there was probably maxed out, but they called in probably an equal number of out of county deputies for security. But
Yeah.
But so we were waiting down that line on the first floor, and then we go up at break, and a couple people try and get in, and I'm like, I'm not going to try it. I know they'll probably save their seats, and everybody did save their seats. Like they put their notebooks down, they put their, whatever it is that they brought in their bags or whatever, their handbags, and put them on their seats. So there are no seats available during the morning break. We go down and wait a little while longer, and then we decide we're going to go up and talk to the deputy that's at the door. And he says at lunch, when everybody's out, they have to clear everything out of the seats. They have to leave completely the courtroom. And it starts over from scratch. The order of people that are allowed in starts over from scratch. I'm like, oh, we have an opportunity here.
Yeah.
So I asked him, where does the line start for after lunch? And he goes, right here, right by the courthouse door. They had that, like those theater type of ribbons that they put across the
Yeah.
The stretchy things.
Yeah.
So he said it starts right here, and I'm like, cool. So I go out to my car and I get some snacks and I chill out a little bit, play a little bit of mindless games on my phone. And then I look in my rearview mirror and I see Carroll County deputies taking lunch into the courthouse. And I'm like, oh shit, they might be doing lunch early. And that was like 11:45. And so I had only been in my car for like maybe 20, 25 minutes. So I'm like, I'm not missing out on a spot in that line. So I go back inside and we're like, okay, we're forming a new line right here on the first floor. We're going to start right here. This is spot number 1 for after lunch, because they wouldn't let us stay up on the third floor. Nobody can stay in the rotunda on the third floor while the trial's going on. They clear it all out. So you have to either stay on the first floor or the second floor. So we all stayed on the first floor, and we all kept looking up to see when the jury's coming out for lunch. When's the jury coming out for lunch? When's the jury coming out for lunch? And they finally did, I don't know, 12:45-ish, I think, 12:30, maybe 12:30, 12:45. We start seeing people come out, and we all sprinted up the steps, and we all stood in line right where he told us to stand in line on that third floor. And we're all standing there for about 10 minutes. And he goes, I'm sorry, folks, but we're going to have to clear the third floor during lunch. You're going to have to go and wait. So we go back down to the first floor. And we waited and we waited. And finally, somebody in our group poked their head up. And he's like, hey, there are people waiting in line up there in our spots. And we sprinted back up the stairs, 2 flights of marble stairs. Sprinted back up, get in line. We're within the first 10. The little group that I was with, we had formed a little friendship while we were sitting there waiting. We didn't get in the first time, and we're all kind of close to each other in line. So we go all the way back up to the 3rd floor, and we're standing there. And probably like a half an hour later, so like 10 minutes before they're supposed to come back from lunch, maybe 15 minutes. He goes, sorry, folks, but every time we bring Richard Allen in, we have to clear the 3rd floor. So y'all are going to have to go back down. So, but in the meantime, so when the guy in our group looked up at the 3rd floor and he saw people up there standing in line, so there were like 6 people that hadn't been waiting all morning with us that were all of a sudden 1 through 5 or 1 through 6 in line, whatever it was. So, okay, that's fine. That's fine. They kind of cheated a little bit, but we're still going to get in because they're letting 24 people in. We'll still be okay. We're not going to make a big deal out of it. But there were a couple people in the group that were a little miffed, and they kind of did make a little bit of a big deal out of it. And the other people are like, sorry about your luck. We got up here first.
So, I know when Becky was testifying that she told them how it was Libby or Abby came over on Sunday and spent the night, and the next morning it was a typical work day for her, and with school being out, she told the girls, you can do some filing for me and I'll pay you, which we had heard that before. But she said then the girls had asked to go to the trails, and one of the last things that was said to her was, Grandma, I will be okay.
Oh my.
Yeah, and that she was upset, visibly upset, of course, when she said that. I would be too.
Right.
Which
which makes all this other nonsense so that much more ridiculous.
Exactly. It does, because it's really this is really about getting true justice for those girls. And like I've said many times, I couldn't tell you for sure if this guy's guilty or not, but I've seen some comments here, and if the state has new evidence that can put him away, they're going to need stronger than what they've got or what they've said so far. And maybe we'll find out, we will find out more as the trial progresses, but just it's so heartbreaking for the families. And it's surreal that we're here all these years later and this case became what it became.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable almost.
And the sideshow that social media has become, and the way that people act. And there were people there today that remembered me from the August 1st hearing and were like, oh, this guy, he's always so respectable.
Well, yeah. And there are a lot of people that want to come at true crimers or creators and this, that, and the other. But
the regular media does, for sure, because I met one of the NBC gals before I went up for the after lunch thing, and she shook my hand, introduced herself. We started talking about it. So she goes, are you one of those people? Because I'm not going to mention his name. I'm not even going to give him the attention, but he was out there doing his lives right on the courthouse steps and the ADA ramp and stuff. And she goes, that guy's just a piece of work. She goes, I talked to the sheriff, and the sheriff said that a lot of these guys that come have been in his jail more often than not when they come in town. But anyway, the regular media, because of jokers like that, looks down on our community. And
well, I think they're also, we ask questions, and if we do it the right way, we can ask the questions they won't ask. Because now we're hearing Russ McQuaid and Angela Ganote, is that her name, come out and say, well, we knew about DNA early on. We put the information out. We were asked to take it back down by media or law enforcement, and we did.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
I saw that.
I know a local journalist. She's an award-winning journalist. She's written books. She's very smart. She's very thorough. She told me about there was a local case that was pretty big, had a lot of people high up in our community was involved in that case. She was absolutely used to keep information out of the media. And when she figured out what was happening, it cost her a marriage. It cost her a lot of things, but she came out and did the right thing in the end because that's how much integrity she has. And when I realized what she was telling me, I was like, man, and this was like a long, a while back, she and I had this discussion. And then I see what happened in this case with the media. And of course, you want to, if you're being told this by law enforcement, you want to do what's right for the case, right? But then now I think they're seeing that maybe it wasn't the right thing to do. But we're not held to the same boundaries as they are, I'm going to say. And just because, we've taken a beating on Twitter all day for asking questions by certain other creators that believe 100% in Alan's guilt. I don't know if the guy did or I'm not here to change people's minds. I'm just here to point out the discrepancies in the investigation, the problems that came out of it, and then we see the way it's been handled from the beginning and the control they've tried to control over it. And then you had to wonder at some point, was that because they knew their investigation was not done thoroughly enough and now they didn't anticipate all these eyes on their investigation? That they just thought that it would just be like, okay, we got the guy. Yay, you guys got him. Thank God. And in the beginning, we were all like that. And then as things began to emerge and come out, we were like, wait a minute, we have questions. And just because we question it doesn't mean we don't, we have formed an opinion either way about guilt or innocence. We can lean one way or the other. But it's just, social media needs to be as responsible for their content as mainstream media.
Well, mainstream media needs to be responsible for their content too.
Exactly. They do.
What happened today.
Exactly.
And the sheriff's office needs to be responsible. So I was in line probably 3 or 4 spots in front of Ron Wilkins from the Lafayette Journal and Courier. And I actually learned a lot from him today because I'm sitting there just like we're doing right here, just talking things out and just saying, well, I noticed this and I noticed that. And it's really frustrating that Judge Gold is not allowing cameras in the courtroom.
Yes.
And I'm like, Indiana judges just seem really opposed to that. And he goes, actually, you're wrong. He goes, Judge Gold was actually in the Indiana pilot program for starting to allow cameras in the courtroom. And he said back in the October 26th hearings, so that had to have been last year. I think he said October 26th. So one of the October hearings, one of the media members blew it. Like they were supposed to stop filming. And I think it was Court TV actually was supposed to stop filming when they were off the record. Like she made it she made a clear order directive to the media. When we go off the record, you stop filming. And they continued to film when they were off the record.
Well, that's something similar happened in one of the Koberger hearings, right? The judge allowed the cameras into the courtroom for the hearings. And he specifically said, don't zoom in on this and that, and the suspect and all the things, the defendant. Well, they just did it anyway. They were zooming right in, and we're watching it going, man, stop doing that. You're going to get the cameras banned out of the courtroom. Be better than that. Then they come out, and the judge got on their case about it. I warned you people not to do this, and here you are doing it. So they need to follow their rules just like we need to, they want us to. Don't come out and blame us when you're the ones acting the fool, But she could have put a fixed camera in there and she could have had control over that camera the way the judge in Idaho ended up doing, the way they did in the Leticia. Right. Well, they did it in Leticia stock trial. It wasn't a perfect camera, but it was a fixed camera and we had it in there, and there were people complaining earlier that, oh, the audio in Sarah Boone's trial sucks. I'm like, well, hey, at least you got it.
Yeah, no kidding. Try sitting in the back row at this hearing with Kelsey testifying with a really mild-mannered voice.
Yes, she does.
And the female attorney is interviewing her, also has a very mild voice. I literally could not hear half of her testimony sitting in the back row.
Oh, no. Welcome in, Crystal. Thank you. Yes, guys. I'm so bad about this, and I think Joe is too. You guys hit the like and share button. We would appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's
welcome,
just,
Crystal.
Yes, welcome in. It's just integrity needs to be across the board for everybody. You know, there are a lot of us out here that do try to do this the right way. Are we perfect? No. Are we going to make missteps along the way? Probably. But I think we're all just doing the best that we can,
Well,
and we want to
some
make
of us
sure.
are. So
Yeah.
this is one of the other things I learned from Ron Wilkins. So when Richard Allen was first arrested, he was arrested like on the 26th, and then he had like a 48-hour hold put on him. And then there was something else that happened, and it ended up being 5 days from the time he was arrested till Superintendent Carter had his press conference.
Yes.
It was 5 days. So he filed a complaint against and I'm going to call it the Sunshine Law. I don't know what they call it in Indiana, but Indiana has something similar to a Sunshine Law, where
Yeah.
when you make an arrest, you have 24 hours from that time to publish that to the media, to release that to the media. And they violated that by 4 days. They went 5 days before they had their press conference to release that information. And he said, I think it's just because Doug Carter wanted his big fancy press conference. My words, not his words, but it
Yeah.
was
Hey.
basically so he could have that glorious press conference where he announced that they had made an arrest. But he was found. His complaint was taken through the hearing process, and it was found to be a valid complaint against Doug Carter and the Indiana State Police for violating that
Yeah.
Public Notice Act.
So you have to start to wonder why, from the very beginning with this arrest, were they doing this stuff? Like, there's no reason to hide it. There was absolutely no reason that I could think of to hide that information and to try to keep that PCA sealed for a solid month. There was really no reason behind it whatsoever. It makes no sense to do that. I mean, I can't think of one legitimate reason why they would do it, especially if you want your community to calm down and not be in fear anymore, and to know we finally got somebody. You would want to shout that from the rooftops and not keep it hidden for several days. That's
Right.
ridiculous. It's not about you, Doug Carter. It never has been about you. You made it about you and your magic hands. Don't get me started on Doug. I'll calm down.
We had a good couple hours on Doug the other night.
I know, right? We done thrown enough shade over there Doug's way. Well, not really, but we'll let it go for tonight. Whatever.
Yeah, he wasn't here. He was not here today. At least I didn't see him. I did see about a half a dozen other state troopers, but I did not see him.
Wow, because Russ McQuaid came out on Ashley Banfield's show night before last, stating that he had learned about DNA evidence within days of the case, but
Yes.
was told by law enforcement it belonged to a state trooper. Um,
What?
so yes, you didn't see the clip. I found it the other
No.
night, and look, actually, when I woke up yesterday morning, I ran across the clip on my news feed on my YouTube, and I listened to it and I was like, what? So I shared the information, and boy, Twitter just blew up with that clip. And they've been talking about it all night last night and today. Was this about the hair specifically that they were talking about they found? What is Russ talking about here? So I think I had linked it in the Discord. I'm not positive, but I'll have to go back and look for it. But so he tells Ashley Banfield that he knew about DNA within days of the case happening, and that he was told it belonged to a state trooper. Well, how did they know within a matter of a couple of days who that belonged to? We don't have 2017, 2024. We're just now coming up with the technology to fast track DNA in the field. So you would have had to go into a lab and had testing done to rule in or out. So did you take swabs from all your people out there on the ground, around in and around the crime scene, and fast track all of that real quick to learn whose DNA that was? And now we wonder, okay, so you're saying that it was a contaminated scene. I mean, it really blew up on Twitter last night and today with that segment.
That's crazy.
I'll send it to you. But yeah. So it's just been a lot of discrepancies, and that's why I'm thinking, some of the mainstream media now looking back, I mean, I think there was information that even Susan Hendricks knew about that she kept out of the public. And I'm just going to say that. because she was probably asked to. And then if you watch how they start to speak now that they're looking back on things, they're like, dang, were we just lied to the whole time and used to control what was actually being put out and how it was being put out.
Wow.
Yeah, you've heard about that state trooper all day, Crystal? Yeah, I mean, I'm going to grab that clip and send it over to Joe real quick. Let me get out of here what I was doing.
Yeah. And then, so we ended up having to go back down to the second floor and then back up to the third floor one more time. And the whole reason we had to go back down to the second floor. So we've been first floor, second floor, third floor, second floor, first floor, third, second, first. I mean, I climbed so many stairs a day, but they took my smartwatch at the security checkpoint, so I couldn't track my steps. I would have like hit a record.
Oh no. I don't want you getting in there with recording. You didn't wear your secret spy glasses or nothing, right?
Right. Yeah. Let's not go there. Whew.
No, let's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so we ended up getting back up before they let the public in. And the whole reason they had sent us down to the second floor was they said we have to clear the third floor before we let Richard Allen in. We get up to the third floor. After we're up there, they let Richard Allen in. So when I was there at the hearings, he came in through the back door of the courthouse in his orange prison jumpsuit, shackled with like 6 deputies around him. When he came into court today, he came in street clothes, actually decent dress clothes, like khaki type of pants and a pastel colored with a little bit of a pattern, bluish, purplish, pinkish, whatever, dress shirt, and his glasses on his head, with his attorneys and a law enforcement officer, not in shackles.
Yeah, and I heard that he looked a lot better, sounded a lot better, and was like engaging with his defense team,
Yes, he was. He was. And when we're sitting there waiting for it to start, he's up at the defense table and he's turning back around because there are defense people that help with defense behind him, and he keeps turning around to engage with them. But occasionally, I caught him peeping into the gallery to see who was sitting in the gallery.
Oh yeah,
Which was
I'm
interesting.
sure. Well, I'm sure out of curiosity, he's like, because he's been in isolation for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't really know what, the public is saying or doing other than what his attorneys are probably telling him. And I know they told him that he's got support out there, for the case.
Yeah, you're not going to like the inside scoop I got today about him from the guy that lives in Peru. We'll get into that later. But I stood in line all 4 hours and then kind of ran up and down the stairs all morning long till we got into the afternoon session with a guy who lives in Peru and knew the clients. I mean, Peru and Mexico are 2 small towns like right next to each other. Richard Allen lived in Mexico, which is like a 5-minute drive from Peru. Oh, where did Salty go?
Oh, I'm here.
You bounced in and out real quick.
Oh, did I?
But you're back, and
Okay.
you're missing your icon.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I see it.
Oh, I don't. Maybe it's me then. It could be me.
Maybe I should jump down and come back.
And if you see it, it should be fine. And I hear you just fine too.
Yeah, I can see it.
You ready?
Let me turn. Sorry, there was a background noise. I was doing something on my computer.
All good.
Okay.
We'll talk about that later though, because it's all unsubstantiated. But I mean, the guy knew his shit and was saying things that seemed credible. So it's at least worth a discussion even if it's not verifiable. Maybe we're seeing some things in the trial that may not be verifiable, like tool mark evidence where the report says it's subjective. Anyway.
Yeah. Very subjective, here, I'm sending you the link to the Russ McQuaid thing.
All right.
In the DM. But yeah, it's crazy. Oh, sorry. I had to grab something.
All right, we'll take a quick look at that as soon as this stupid ad plays. Skip ad. All right, pop that out to its own window. And Present. Share screen. Boom. Here we go. Let's unmute first.
16 people willing or at least able to put their lives on hold for a solid month and move 100 miles away, where their days will be spent in a courtroom and their nights will be spent stuck in a mid-priced hotel. Any takers? Because amazingly, it took less than 2 days to find those people. 12 jurors and 4 alternates in a long-awaited murder trial of that guy, Richard Allen, in Indiana, and the opening statements are set for this Friday. Richard Allen is accused of killing 13-year-old Abby Williams and 14-year-old Libby German near an abandoned railway bridge in Delphi, Indiana, more than 7.5 years ago. But 2 bombshells were dropped by the defense before the opening statements even get underway. One of Allen's attorneys revealed that hair was found clutched in the hand of Abby Williams when they found her body. We'd never heard that before. And bombshell number 2, the hair did not belong to Richard Allen. How's that for reasonable doubt? On the other side, of course, are jailhouse phone calls to his wife where Allen allegedly admits over and over to killing the girls and, quote, incriminating statements to both inmates and guards, end quote. All of that during his time in lockup. But the defense says that Allen said all of those things under duress and in a state of psychosis. And remember those composite sketches that the police put out during the 5 long years they were looking for a suspect? The sketches bear little resemblance to Richard Allen, and the state now wants those barred from the trial. Hearing for that is set for on Thursday. But I want to bring in Russ McQuaid, a reporter with News Nation affiliate Fox 59 in Indianapolis. Great to have you, Russ. Thanks for being on. So let's talk about that hair, because it just feels like that it would have just taken the oxygen out of the courtroom. Did it? And what does it mean?
Well, for so many of us that have covered this case, not only for 7.5 years, but the 2 years going back to this month in 2022 when Richard Allen was put under arrest, and right away we had difficulty getting answers.
Hold on, Salty. People are saying that your icon is missing too. Do you want to jump out and jump back again real quick while I'm playing this?
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay.
About the search warrant, about the probable cause, even his whereabouts as he was moved from jail to jail in secret without lawyer representation. This is why when we attended the jury selection the last 2 days, it's very important not only to see what the jurors say when they're questioned, can you be fair and impartial, but you also have to listen to what the attorneys say, because through their questions, you start to get a lead on where they're going with their strategy and their case. And it was on the second day, today, not the first day, when Andrew Baldwin, one of the defense attorneys, as he is trotting out several of the aspects of the state's case, which he says won't hold water, and he said, yes, there was hair discovered in Abby's hands, and that hair did not belong to Richard Allen. You look at the various photographs of Richard Allen. Of course, the most recent photographs or most early photographs we have were 2022, not 2017. Yeah. If you look at Richard Allen, he's a bald-headed man with close cropped hair. So, and there's always been
with a beard, though, you know.
Well, and he did.
I want to ask you this, though.
Yeah.
I do. Let me ask you this, because there's some other stuff that really sort of jumps out. In 2022, Libby's grandma said in an interview that the police told her there was DNA in the case. Just days after the actual murder itself in 2017, the sheriff told your station that they had DNA evidence, and then law enforcement later asked to have that information pulled from the website. Does that start to square with this bombshell today?
I was told that was DNA of a state trooper. Assuming it was a state trooper that was down there investigating the crime scene. I was told that personally within the first few days of the investigation. Then that information sort of went away. It's like a lot of things in this case where they pop up and then suddenly they don't seem to hold water, as you had previously mentioned. Now we have a hearing on Thursday morning where the prosecution wants to quash the sketches which came from a state police artist taking the description of witnesses on the bridge of people they allegedly saw there that day. That as recently as this last July, the lead state police trooper verified and vouched for those sketches in open court. And now 2 months later, the state wants to pull those from evidence because they say they don't look like Richard Allen. They were only investigative tools that we were using along the way. And if the defense is successful in showing these to the jurors, it will just confuse them because they don't look like Richard Allen.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of
Can you see me now?
Yes, I can see you now.
Okay. I turned the Wi-Fi on my phone. I don't know what I'm way out in the country, so signal might have got weirded out. But so see, he just was that just an attempt to get that information out of the public because you didn't want your suspect to know you have DNA?
Yeah, and well, and the other thing is, I was told. He said, I was told it was a state trooper that was involved in the investigation, and
Yeah.
we're going to hear some testimony from Deputy Catherine that is intriguing to me. He was the last one to testify today, and there are some timeline issues in there, and Auger tried to probe those, but to be honest, I don't think she did it as successfully that registered with the jury as she could have.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that later because he was the last one. After Richard Allen came in, they let us in at 126. That's when I saw Richard Allen turning around to talk to his defense, to his counsel, and occasionally peeking into the gallery. That's my note, 1331, 131. Then at 132, Judge Gull enters. We're just sitting there in dead silence, like you could hear a pin drop, waiting for the jury to come in. And then the jury comes in, and the state calls Kelsey. And they lay some foundational questions. How old were you in 2017? Did you have a driver's license? What was your relationship with Libby? She said, we were very close. And then they asked her if Abby had a phone. She said Abby did not have her own phone. And then they asked about Libby, Libby just in general. What was Libby like? And she said Libby was always outgoing. She was very brave. She would stick up for other people. She wasn't afraid to stick up for other people. And let me read my notes. Good grief. Sometimes my notes got really bad.
And from what we understand, Libby was very intrigued by crimes, right? And she was taking a criminology class in school.
If I remember right, yes, I think so.
Yeah. And did things like that, being the kind of girl she was, did that prompt her into thinking, man, I should turn this camera on and video this weird guy?
Right.
The suspicion, or you're two girls out there alone and there's a guy anywhere around you. But good for her, because Libby was trying, and I think she tried at the very end. And I hope that, did they take clippings from the girls' nails? Was there any DNA under their nails? And things of that nature are important, to find out as this case moves forward. Because those are the main, those are the simplest things you should do as an
Right.
investigator.
And you would think, on the defense team, if that's not included in your discovery from the state, you would be asking about it, right?
Oh, definitely. I would be like, well, what about this, this, and this? Did you collect all these things? Because that's absolutely important. Because you never know if there's going to be anything under nails or not. A lot of times, a lot of the victims end up getting at least a scratch in or something.
Right. Especially feisty ones like Libby. Feisty, strong ones like Libby.
Well, exactly. And if you got a lone wolf perpetrator, and you got two victims, at some point, one may try to fight back a little bit, regardless if you had a gun, two separate knives, whatever the case. Because now we're hearing that there was two separate knives used. One was serrated and one was not.
That is the first I've heard of that, and that blows my mind.
Right. So why would you? And if you look at the search warrant return from Allen's home, he had multiple knives in that house, which that's okay, because a lot of guys I know have a lot of knives, especially these deer hunters, of all kind of shapes and sizes. So that's not abnormal to me. That doesn't, make me feel any kind of way whatsoever. But so we heard box cutters. I'm like, why in the hell would dude take a box cutter if he owned a bunch of knives? And then we hear this today, there's 2 separate knives used. Like, so he took 2 separate knives and a gun?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
why would you take 2 separate knives in case one didn't work well? I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. One person with 2 very sharp knives does not. It doesn't track. It doesn't track with
No,
common
it
sense.
doesn't really make
No.
sense. I mean, I know that a lot of the crimes we cover don't ever make sense, but for people to do what they do. But when it comes down to the actual crime and the kind of weapons used and the methods and techniques used, those absolutely matter because you can profile your assailant like that a lot of times. But yeah, we that is according to the defense now this morning that there were 2 separate knives used during openings. We heard that.
Okay, so now I finally was able to read my notes. So Kelsey's next story was about the first time that she and Libby went to go cross the Monon High Bridge. And there were tresses missing, or not tresses, there were railroad ties missing from parts of the bridge. So there are gaps. And she testified that at one point in time when there was a gap that she wasn't comfortable with, in the part that's like the deepest over the creek, over the Deer Creek, she got down on her hands and knees and like crawled over it to get from one side to the other of that gap.
Yeah.
And she was asked, did Libby have to crawl? And she said, no, Libby did not crawl. Libby just went right over it.
And I had heard her say that before in interviews. That very same thing. Libby was brave and wasn't really scared of anything. She was a little daredevil. And, and I know we had heard that that was supposedly Abby's first time doing it. And so, she may have been a little more nervous. Yes. Right. So she was probably a little more nervous about it, but Libby just seemed to be really brave in every step of the way, you know.
She probably had to talk Abby into it. I mean, totally had to talk Abby into it. And we'll hear from Abby's mom in a little bit. Abby's mom testified a little bit about that.
Okay.
At this point, I kind of look over and I'm kind of watching the jury because Kelsey's testimony was really hard to hear, especially from the back of the courtroom. Her audio was weak. She wasn't anywhere near the mic. The mic wasn't picking any of it up. And the female attorney's voice was faint and wasn't carrying very far. And so I missed some of it, but I looked over at the jury and the jury was very attentive. The jury was paying close attention to this testimony from Kelsey. And there were 2 or 3 of them that were taking notes, actively taking notes. The rest of them were just watching and listening. Kelsey testified that it wasn't unusual for her to drop off Abby and Libby together at places by themselves. They were often dropped off places by themselves, whether it's at the high school for a swim meet. And I'm kind of filling in the blanks here. She didn't say that on the stand at this point in time, but there were other points in time when Libby's dad did testify to things like that, and Abby's mom. So they would get dropped off together and spend time together at places alone all the time. So nobody really had any concern about it. Kelsey certainly.
I know when we were first hearing of the case and they were at these trails and people were saying things like, oh my God, who would let these young girls go out alone and all these things? And I'm like, well, if you think about it, if you live in a small town, rural area, and this is the normal place you go, it's not out of the normal, right? Like I've said, my kid will go down to one of our local trails, and now I'm like on him about, be safe, have your phone, all these things, you never know. But it's not uncommon, and it's not anybody's fault, nothing should have happened that day. And they weren't the only ones at the trails. There were other people out there. So it wasn't abnormal.
There were lots of people out there, actually.
Yeah. It wasn't abnormal for these girls in their safety in numbers. So you think when your kid is with their friends, nothing will happen. And the other night, my kid took off over to two counties away with his best friends. They all went to a little concert. Well, his mom, was texting me That night, she's like, "Oh my God, they're finally on their way home. Good, I'm tired. I can go to bed." Because she and I were, we had to let them go. They're 16, 17-year-old boys, and we want them to be. I'm like, well, they're together, so they should be safe and things like that. But talking to your kids about safety is one thing, but you just never know when they're going to end up in a bad situation, and it's really nobody's fault that a bad person's out there waiting to do harm.
Right.
It's just not. And Libby's grandmother went through enough hell when she realized that Libby had been communicating with that Anthony Schatz account, because she felt guilty that she did not monitor the social media close enough. But
Yep.
you can only do so much,
It's a fight. It's a struggle with teenagers
Yeah,
all the time as a parent,
yeah,
because they fight it so hard. They're like, "Why do you have to control me? Why do you have to control
right,
everything I
right.
do?"
You're worrying for no reason. Nothing's gonna and all these things. I know what I'm doing. I would never do this and that with a stranger. But you just reiterate with your kids and hope, that it gets through. And it's still nobody's fault that creeps like Keegan Klein are in a basement doing the shit he was doing. 'Cause Libby wasn't the only one he was doing it to, or communicating with and catfishing and things of that nature. So for people to turn around and blame them for taking the girls out there was really, it's like, come on, people, stop it, because it could be you. Are you that kind of parent? You never let your child out of your sight? Because guess what? They're going to find a way to get out of your sight if you continue to be that kind of parent.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right.
And they will hide as much of it from you as they can in the process,
Right.
because they know you wouldn't approve or you didn't approve. Whereas if you give them some freedom, but how much freedom do you give? Yeah, that I can just imagine the guilt. I can just imagine. So
Let's be respectful of the families, guys. We don't know. I mean, I, in it for money. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean, but okay.
yeah, because they're so rich. Yes. Oh, you're talking about a lawsuit. They wanna sue. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, look, if you botched an investigation and put my community through hell for 5 years and let my child's killer go free because you made a mistake, you might get a lawsuit.
Butterfly, I think we gotta give another
Yeah,
timeout. We gotta give a
yeah.
timeout, Butterfly, if you don't mind. My
But
goodness. I told you I have a very, very low troll tolerance.
that's fine, because I'm glad you said something, because I'm usually okay to let chat flow, but that's a little ridiculous of a statement right there. How are they? I don't even understand that. How have they made millions?
No, if you saw them sitting in court today, they're two of the most humble people, and yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Yeah, okay, we got it.
He gone.
He gone later.
I
You
went right
can't
up to
bring.
that. I went right up to that gong. Bong. And nobody was fighting me about it.
Nope, nope, nope.
Do you remember that show? Oh my gosh, the Gong
Yes.
Show. What a crazy, crazy show that was. They should bring that back. They should do a modern version of the Gong Show.
Oh my God, don't let me on the panel with that. I'll be gonking everybody on. JLR gong.
do a true crime Gong Show, like
Ooh, let's do.
Sarah Boone. Who's the case? Sarah Boone is the case. Let's put her up. Let's present the facts as we know them right now. Does she get?
Lord.
Yeah.
I
Who's
think
gonna go and gong
look,
hit that
I
gong?
haven't watched anything of that trial today because I was so focused on this, because Sarah is just like, to me it's just like whatever. But I'm pretty sure they lugged that suitcase into court today. There was a giant box in there, and I saw some rumblings on Twitter about that. So go Sarah, get your snacks in, girl.
No, she got denied. She got denied her
Did she
snacks.
get good?
Yeah.
No
Denied.
snacks for you, Snara.
All right. So we
Okay,
did
back on
okay.
track.
So yeah, the next topic that came up was the sweatshirt. And so they didn't have coats on. So they got in the back of the car,
Mm-hmm.
and Libby got a swim sweatshirt out of the back of the car, and supposedly it's a brand new swim sweatshirt. And the reason I say brand new is that comes up later.
Okay.
So she put on a swim sweatshirt. I don't know if it was a Delphi High swimming team sweatshirt or whatever it was. All it was called was like a whitish swim sweatshirt. And then I make a note in my notes. This line of questioning is very difficult to hear. But then they bring up the state's exhibit number 1. It's a photo of Abby and Libby in the car taking a selfie on the way to the bridge that got Snapchat.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
they're in the. So Kelsey is driving them to the bridge. So they called up Kelsey and said, "Can you come? Can you take us to the Monon High Bridge?" And Kelsey's like, "Yeah, okay, whatever, big sister thing." And we'll find out why she was so willing to do it in a second. But she comes and picks them up, and on the way to the Monon High Bridge, they take a selfie in the back of the car and they Snapchat it. So that was defense exhibit number 1. Is this an accurate representation of the girls in the back of the car on the way to the bridge? Yes.
And did it come out that when they did that Snapchat photo, did they say they were going to the bridge?
Not that I know of. That
Okay.
was not discussed in this line of questioning.
Okay.
It was just, is this an accurate picture of them, selfie of them in the back of the car?
Right.
So state exhibit number 2 is a very, very large aerial photograph of the area around the Monona High Bridge, and it is like zoomed way out. So you can see the Freedom Bridge. So here's a little beef that I have, and it's a beef that kind of I have with myself and kind of I have with the state, because they put this huge poster up on an easel facing the jury, which is off 90 degrees to my, well, the jury's off 45 degrees to my right, which means that the photo is facing 90 degrees to my right, and I can't freaking see the thing. So I picked a bad spot. I should have picked a spot that was a lot as close to the jury as I could get, which would have still been a good 40, 50 feet away from the jury, but I would have had a better view of the exhibits. So they're presenting these exhibits to the jury. I can't see this one, but except for when they like turn it around to pick it up to put it on the easel. And it's just a big, huge aerial photograph of the blown up area around the Monona High Bridge, Freedom Bridge, basically that whole area. So did you pass by that that Hoosier Harvest place on the way? Yes, but we can. And where did you go after you dropped them off? I continued on in the same direction afterward, after dropping them off. So she came in from the east, I think. She dropped them off and then continued on to the Hoosier Heartland and kind of did this. So they have this thing on the Hoosier Heartland corridor when you're coming from a county road and you're crossing the Hoosier Heartland. When they first put that highway in, which has been like, it's been 14 years now, 13 years since they put that in, there were some road intersections. So it's not like a freeway. You can get access to it from some of the county roads. Like if you have a freeway, you have to wait till you get to an exit. But they made intersections with a lot of the county roads, but they were having some fatalities at some of those intersections. And I know the person that used to be the Carroll County Highway engineer when Hoosier Heartland was put in there. And the solution that they came up with is, okay, when you come off of a side county road, like the one that's by the drop off for the Monon Trails, by the farm drop off, we're going to make you drive up about 1/8 of a mile and then turn around on the Hoosier Heartland and come back down 1/8 of a mile before you get on that county road. We want to eliminate some of these perpendicular crossings. So that's what she said she did. She went down and she pointed to that, and I could see where she was pointing on that. She did one of those like little, I call it a U-turn, but it's, you have to drive up the highway and then you have to come back down the highway to continue on the same county road that crosses the Hoosier Heartland. So that's what she did. She went on into town to go visit her boyfriend.
Yes. She was supposed to be going to her boyfriend's house before she went off to work.
Yes. And did you know if Libby's phone was charged or not? No, I didn't know. But Libby did have her phone. She didn't know how charged it was. So she dropped them off about 1:45. And I say drop them off about 1:45 because the question was, what time did you go to town? And she said about 1:45. So going to town and dropping them off is pretty much simultaneous, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then they start to get into the search. So she gets a call, and she gets a call from her dad, from Libby's dad. And have you seen the girls? Do you know where the girls are? No, I don't. Well, I can't find them. I've been here a while looking for them, and I can't find them. So she heads down there with Cody, with her uncle Cody, with her uncle Cody, to go look for the girls. They meet family at the bridge to look for the girls. She and Cody cross the bridge, and then they turn left, which is exactly what we believe happened to the girls, right? Left down the hill.
Yeah.
They turned left. So then the state brings out another exhibit, which is a closer up of the bridge, doesn't include like the Freedom Bridge and all the areas that are like peripheral, zoomed in on the Monon High Bridge. And they ask her about that. So she says they went south off of the bridge and they hit that private drive that goes down under the bridge, that goes down to BW's house. They hit that private drive and they took it all the way to the gate looking for Abby and Libby. Obviously didn't find them. And then they went back the way that they came. So they cross the bridge, they go down the hill, they get on that private drive, they take that private drive as far as it'll go. It sounds like BW may have a gate across the drive, maybe. I almost want to see that.
Oh, you mean when you approach the property there from the end of the drive?
Yes.
Okay.
So she said they stopped at the gate and they turned around and they went back. And this is the early search. This isn't the late search.
Yes.
And she gets asked, did you ever leave the path while on the search? And she said, no, we never left the path. So they didn't like wander into the woods down to the creek to look for the girls.
Right.
So did you think that something bad had happened? No. That gives me goosebumps, chills, whatever you want to call it.
You never want to think the worst right off the bat. Well, I'm that kind of person. I don't want to think the worst right out of the gate. I have to believe to the bitter end something's going to be okay. And, as parents, we all experience things and handle things differently, but I'm that kind of person. My mind can go there for a split second that something bad could be happening, but I'm going to hold out for the best until I know otherwise, but it's not going to hinder my looking for them. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, I can get why they wouldn't think automatically something bad had happened,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's so as an older sister, I wonder if it's like a hybrid between what a parent feels, where all of the worst things that could have happened to your child goes through your mind, and just a few of those things may go through your mind and you just dismiss them like, no, they're fine, they'll be okay.
Yeah.
They just like wandered off somewhere.
Yeah, they didn't, at first. I mean, I've even heard her say that, did one of the girls accidentally fall from the bridge? Were they hurt? Could they not, not able to get up and come get help? And that's what they were thinking in the beginning. Not they, but Kelsey, that did something just happen, like an accident,
Right.
or did they wander off into the woods looking, and get lost? And like I said, there's people out there who automatically want to go to the bad, but a lot of I think, to keep your sanity mechanisms, you don't want to think the worst right off the bat. You're still going to hold out hope, kind of thing, until you know otherwise.
Right. Yeah. You suppress the negative thoughts for sure, as long as you can.
Yeah.
There are people who aren't very good at that and just totally freak out in situations, and it's usually not helpful, but it's hard to blame them. That's hard to blame them.
Yeah. I'm telling you, we had a neighbor when my girls were young, and they were about these girls. Well, they were a little younger than these girls. And I always had this one neighbor's kid at my house all the time. Nothing ever happened. My child spent the night at her house one time, once. 6 a.m., my phone rings. Are the girls at your house? I jump out of my bed. What do you mean, are they at my house? They are at your house. They're not here. I threw the phone down. I ran from my house across the street, right up into her house, right to that bedroom. When I got to that bedroom door and saw an empty room, my heart sank. It was 6 a.m. Where the hell is my child? She knows better than to walk out of anybody's house without telling me. And within minutes, everybody in the neighborhood was out there looking, and they were found within minutes. Thank God. But the little girl that my child went to spend the night with didn't like her home life very well and wanted to move to Texas where her aunt lived. We're in Florida. So she's going to walk to Texas. My child didn't want her to walk alone. So she was going to walk with her
To Texas.
to Texas. When my neighbor was the one to find them. I mean, they were all out looking. We'd already called the cops, everything, within minutes. And my neighbor found them. She got them in the car, brought them back. My daughter was in so much trouble, right? She scared us to death. But my mind still didn't go to the worst case scenario. It went to, okay, we're going to find them in a minute, and I'm going to figure out what happened here. And luckily we did. But as a parent, to know for even a split second, your child could be missing, your mind can go in a million different directions. But I feel like if I'm a panicker and I begin to panic, I'm going to lose control. I'm not going to be any good to my child at that point. Or my other two kids who were standing here in one room where their big sister just went. I have to try to maintain my sanity for their sakes. And it's like, if you're in a horror movie and you got that one screaming chick that's going to let the bad guy know where we're all at hiding because she won't shut up, I'm going to punch her because you need to shut up. Panicking can cause a lot of problems. So I try not to go there first. It's hard. It's really hard, but you can't help it sometimes. You're going to panic and fear the worst sometimes. It just depends on the situation, I guess, and the person. But,
Yeah.
you just don't want to ever have to wonder where your child is, even for a moment.
Nope.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we go to Exhibit 4, where the state prepared a video of the trail and the bridge from a drone. And they did it of the modern trail and the bridge. How on earth did they not prepare a video of the trail and bridge in 2017 after they found the girls' bodies? Anyway, so they asked, yeah, that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Right.
I'm not going down there, but so they ask her, is this an accurate depiction of the trail? And she goes, well, yeah, the way it is now, but not the way it was then. She doesn't say it that way. I said it with a little attitude. She didn't have any attitude at all.
Joe's theatrics, guys.
Right.
Gotta love it.
But the monitor is all the way on the left side of the courtroom and the jury's all the way on the right side of the courtroom. So I actually see some jurors kind of straining a little bit. It's a huge monitor, and it's a huge smart monitor. So it's like got an interactive touch screen to it. So you can like zoom in on stuff and zoom out on stuff. We'll get to that later. They didn't do it for this video. They just played the video. They played like 5 minutes worth of video, and the female defense or the female state attorney, I don't remember what her name is, asking the questions like, this is, does the trail look like this? And when you get to this point in the trail, if you go left, what does it lead to? If you go right, what does it lead to? So the left goes to the Freedom Bridge, the right goes to the Monon Bridge. So they go down the Monon Bridge with this video, and it's just kind of a boring video. And I actually looked over at the jury during this point, and there is a dude on the top right side of the jury that is one of the note takers. and he's just like looking all around. Like he's looking into the gallery, he's looking into the jury box. He's like paying 50% attention to this video.
Wow.
Probably because it's boring. But at one point in time, he literally made eye contact with me because I was looking at him and everybody else was looking at the video. And I just was like, that's kind of weird. that's kind of weird. I just kind of like raised my eyebrow. And I'm like, dude, shouldn't you be paying attention to the video?
Yeah, I would want to be paying attention to the video because if I'm the jury, I want to know as much as I can about that scene.
Right. Yes. Yeah,
And,
because
you know,
they theoretically should not know anything about it right now. Like we're all way familiar with it. I mean,
right,
because we've done deep dives into where we thought the girls were, where we
right.
thought they went, where they thought they walked, where we thought Bridge Guy was, where we thought he took him, and where we know he
And I
took
know,
him.
and I remember the first time that I realized that Private Drive was down there
Yes, me
under
too.
the bridge down the hill. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Wait a minute, you know? And so it's absolutely necessary to understand your crime scene.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
And I don't believe they obviously didn't use Faro scans back then in 2017 at this particular crime scene, or we'd already know about it.
Right. They had them available, though. They had them available.
Yeah,
I know for
they
a
were.
fact they had them available. Yeah.
They were. And we know they were used in the Koberger case at the 1122 King Roadhouse. They used the Faro scans in Maddie Soto's case of the crime scene where she was found. So, because they're going to try to get away from taking jurors to scenes by using these Faro scan type things. And I understand that. I don't have an issue with it because they're able to do a lot of really great things with these scans to recreate. But that needed to be done in this case because it's such a weird terrain and area and down the hill, across the creek kind of thing. To understand it is important.
Yes. And the jury needs to understand it.
Yeah, and I think they withdrew the motion to take the jury out there.
Yes, right. So all they have to rely on are the court exhibits, including this video.
Damn.
So I noted in my notes that he was one of the note takers, and I wondered to myself if he's just doodling in his notepad.
Oh Lord, right? Because you want to have faith in your note takers, but now it makes you do wonder what's this dude over there doing? Is he drawing Is he drawing sketches?
I've seen one of the courtroom sketches today, and it looked like it was done in crayon.
I saw that, and I'm like, and they thought I'm not even going to say what the Twitter. It was on Twitter.
No.
I was on Twitter when I saw it, but they're like, okay, so we're going to ignore these two sketches, but y'all look at this sketch. I was like, holy shit, who drew that?
Yeah, there weren't any 8th graders in the gallery. I mean,
well, I think the sketch artists that the state used to come up with those sketches did a way better job than the one in the courtroom did.
Yeah. Okay, so then we go into a discussion about Snapchat. So this is still direct examination by the state of Kelsey. It's an app, and it doesn't have to be phone, or it doesn't have to be pictures that are sent back and forth between people in your groups or your I don't know if they call them Snapchat friends or whatever they call it. I don't have Snapchat. I've never had Snapchat, and neither did Andrew Baldwin. So he was kind of on the same page I was when he came up to cross-examine. But you can send just text messages with Snapchat, apparently.
You can, and those were talked about. Lord, over in the Koberger case, we've heard so much about these damn Snapchat messages because they can disappear, right? You can save them. You can have a setting where when you send your snaps back and forth to each other, it will disappear. And people used to call it the cheating app when it first came out because people who are doing things on the slot, I can go Snapchat my boyfriend or whatever, and it'll disappear and no one's going to see it. So that's how they claim that everybody knew way hours before the cops knew over there in Idaho, because apparently Snapchats were going out about what was going down. But it's like, yeah, well, no wonder, because there were kids out there, and of course they're sending messages to one another. Something's bad's happening. We don't know what it is, that kind of thing. But yes, you can send snap messages to one another without having to use a photo.
Yeah.
And they can disappear, but I think they can still recover the data on that stuff.
Right. Well, the questioning that they went down on this road, it sounds like you have the option to save it, like either when you send it or right after you send it. You can save it or not save it. And I don't know, I couldn't understand what the answer was, but you can do one or the other. You can either save it or you can have it disappear. But the person you send it to, for them to be able to save it, they actually have to do a screenshot of it.
Yeah.
So, but you get notified if it's on if you're the one that sent it and somebody that you sent it to screenshots it, you actually get notified that
Yes, it will tell you that.
it.
Right, because it's supposed to be, it will notify you. Like my daughter would send me photos sometimes in the mornings of my granddaughter, right? Getting ready for school, or if it was a certain thing going on, and if I took a screenshot of the photo, it would notify my daughter if I did that, which she's fine with it. We were both laughing about that in the past. We're like, you can't, this thing won't let you spy on people because it's going to know when you take a damn screenshot and it's going to notify the other person. So yeah, it does do that.
Yes. And then so they talked about the 2 Snapchats that they had from Libby of the bridge picture empty and then the picture with Abby on the bridge. And he asked her, oh wait, no, I think that was Baldwin's Cross where he asked her. Yes, okay, we'll get to that later. So I'm trying to read between my notes and I almost read too much. So after they talk about Snapchat, then they go back to the second search. So they're kind of jumping all over the place, which is kind of mind-boggling to me. But so when they went back for the second search, when they realized that they couldn't find it the first time, and they left, and then they came back to the Monon High Bridge to search again. This time when they crossed the bridge, so they crossed it again, and by this time it's getting kind of dusky, right? It's getting like later on. They instead of turning left at the end of the bridge, they turned right. So they went towards BW's house. But they kind of curled underneath and they went underneath the bridge to look for them. So that was on that access road where they went to go look. And they did encounter actually 2 women while they were looking for the girls. So there were 2 other women out there. They didn't ask her much about those. And then for some reason, someone that was on an ATV yelled that the girls had been found. So they kind of like halfway called off the search and then realized that that was incorrect, that the girls hadn't been found. And at this point in time, the lady that's sitting next to me, and she was one of the group that we were all kind of hanging out together that we didn't get in. And then we all went up to the 3rd floor and the 2nd floor and the 1st floor and the 3rd floor and the 2nd floor and back up to the 3rd floor. So I was ahead of her in line. So I went and sat down and she picked me out to come and sit down next to me. And at this point in the trial, she stands up in the gallery and raises her hand. And Judge Gull gives her the evil eye, obviously. And she goes, we can't hear because the microphone isn't directed towards the witness. And Judge Gull goes, ma'am, sit down.
Oh Lord, y'all don't aggravate that lady.
Right? And she goes, but we can't hear the witness. She goes, ma'am, sit down. And
wow.
I'm like, oh, for the love of God, why would you ever stand up in Judge Gull's court and raise your hand in the middle of a murder trial?
Yeah, you don't do that.
And when she first stood up, I like tugged on the side of her pants and I'm like, sit down, lady. And I really wanted to just grab her and set her down in the chair like a kid and be like, shut up. Oh my God. Like in the middle of a murder trial, she stands up and raises her hand out of the gallery.
Yeah, not real smart.
No. And honestly, I was kind of hoping that she would like say one more thing and Judge Gull would be like, get her out of here. Because I was just like, I was mortified. I could feel my face turning red, just like sitting next to her. And I'm like, good Lord, please nobody think that she's associated with me in any way. I do not know this woman. Oh, yeah. And the other people that were with me in the row were like, what the fuck, lady? And they kept shooting her dirty looks.
I'm reading some of the comments. I want to engage and talk about that a little bit. So Amy, I'm curious, if the hair was one of Libby's family members, how would Richard Allen have obtained that hair to put there to throw off the officers? And I agree with you guys. Allen's build does look similar to the bridge guy, but so does one of the alternate suspects, like really closely also resembles. So there's, I don't know if this guy is guilty or innocent. I just know that there's a lot of unanswered questions with this case. And for them to prove that he was there, they got to place him there other than that video. And there's so much discrepancies, it's not even funny anymore. But I was just curious at how, and if we haven't really heard Alan's voice a lot to compare it with the guys down the hill. Now, we also heard today that allegedly that audio says girls down the hill also. So that's a whole 43-second video. We have not heard the entire thing. We've heard, in the beginning, we just got the image, and it was a loop image of a guy taking a couple of steps over and over. It's not like he's walking down the bridge, it's looped. So then they came in later and added down the hill. Then they came back in later after that and added guys down the hill. But we still have not heard or viewed that 43-second video. I'm assuming it will be played in court at some point, because if I'm the defense attorney, I want the whole thing out there in court. And the families did ask law enforcement to release more of that after like a year or two had gone by and no arrests. Could you just release a little more and maybe it would jog a memory? And law enforcement refused to do it. Now, we've also often wondered what could be on there that, there could be some really horrible things said on there we don't really want to hear. But, it matters if that's your only evidence you have, is that 43-second video clip. It's going to have to tell you a lot. So we can't help but be curious about it by nature, to want to know more about it, But I've never heard Rick Allen's voice speak enough for us to make a comparison. And I have followed the case since the day the girls disappeared too, guys. A lot of us have. A lot of us have been on this case for a very long time. Yeah. DNA transfer will come up. Yeah, DNA transfer rears its ugly head often.
No. This is the hair transfer. Okay. So that was the end of direct examination. Now we get into Baldwin's Cross at 14:34. So 2:34 p.m. He pulls back up state exhibit number 2, which is one of the aerials. And he talks about the Hoosier harvester or whatever, harvester having a cam. And she said, I've heard that it does. And then he talks about the Mears Farm entrance and asked her how she pulled in and did she have to back up to pull out. And she said, no, I just pulled in and then I just continued. So it sounded like she kind of did a sideways drop off of the girls, right? Just kind of pulled off the road, didn't like pull into a parking spot, like perpendicular to the road, just kind of parallel with it. And started asking about her relationship, or she started asking about Libby. Again, she said Libby would stand up for people. She was not afraid to yell, and she had a strong voice. These are Baldwin's questions asking about Libby. Did she have a strong voice? Yes. Did she yell? She was not afraid to yell. Then talking about the Monon High Bridge. This is where they talk about Kelsey crawling over it because of the gaps with the railroad ties. So I got into that a little earlier, probably a little too soon. He clarified with her that she crawled over the gaps in the bridge where they were missing railroad ties, and Libby did not. Libby just like right over them. And then Snapchat, he asked her, so when she took this photo of Libby, she had gone ahead of Libby and she was towards the south end of the bridge looking north. Yes. So then they pull up, or then they present their first exhibit, Defense Exhibit A, was the Snapchat photo of Abby on the bridge. And he asked her, how far would you estimate that Abby was across the bridge? Like, if you could, are you good with fractions? What percentage would you put with that? And she said, I don't know. And he said, would it help to refresh your memory if I showed you that picture? So that's when they enter their Defense Exhibit A. That's the Snapchat photo of Abby on the bridge that Libby took. And then, so Kelsey says, it looks like she was about a fourth of the way across the bridge. He says, it's about 25%. She says, yeah, about 25%. So then they talk about two other people that they met on the bridge, and I didn't get their names because her response was too hard to hear. And then when they were out searching, when she went back to search, yeah, that's when they ran into two other people that were on the bridge on the second search. Then he goes into the sweatshirt. Was it a new swim sweatshirt? Yes. Then would you expect one of your hairs to be inside of that sweatshirt? Possibly. Well, how would that be if it's a new sweatshirt? By putting it through the laundry. So he's probing the question how one of her hairs could be in Libby's hands, and this is the transfer testimony. It wasn't directly stated that way, but you can kind of read between the lines.
Well, the fact that we know that Abby was redressed at some point with Libby's clothes. Now, the transfer could have come from that alone. And the defense...
he was asking, though, how did the hair get on the sweatshirt if it was a new sweatshirt?
Right. And I understand that. And that makes a lot of sense, because you got to try to make it make sense if there's because you have to explain transfer DNA at some point. And we all know it happens. You can stand next to me and we could transfer DNA. And I lose strands of hair. I have an autoimmune disease, so I'm always losing strands of hair. My hair will be every damn where. So I understand loose hairs everywhere. But if it's literally entwined in a finger or a hand, that's a little different than just being transferred to your body because it fell off of a shirt. Now, could that still have happened when she was reclothed into Libby's clothing? Yes, it could have. Good. But the fact that it was, even if it was a hair and it was from Libby's family member, why did law enforcement not test that immediately right away, or even think it was important to test? Why blow it off? Why assume anything? You can't make assumptions when you're investigating a crime scene.
Right. And no, not at all. I mean, that's what happens when you assume. But
so yeah, they could just be setting up the fact that this was not a thorough investigated crime scene. They let too many things go they shouldn't have. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was
No, you're fine. You're fine. I had a train of thought there because there was something that I forgot to write in my notes, and you reminded me of it, and then I forgot about it by the time I got back to
it. Hey, Junior Johnson, I'm familiar with you from Mr. Steve's community. Welcome in.
Oh, I know what it was. He asked her, so have you recently been tested, or have you recently been asked for a DNA sample? Yes. Have you ever been asked for one before? Yes. So that was an interesting thing that I did not put in my notes that you reminded me of. Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
That was
I'm all about evidence. I mean, because no matter what our theories are or what we think or don't think, in the end, it's going to come down to evidence collected at the scene in every single case we look at. That it's going to come down to that evidence. And if law enforcement didn't do a proper investigation from the get-go, what else did they you lost a tip, you lost a valid tip for 5 years. So you did way more than just lose a tip, obviously. You botched from the beginning. We can't have that in these cases. You don't get justice for your victims if you don't do a thorough job at your crime scene.
Yeah. Well, we saw that with Karen Reed too. I mean, we've seen it with way too many cases. Way too many.
Right. Yeah.
Like we have there are high-end investigative tools that all police departments have not used recently. Like you mentioned the Faro scan. What if they had done a Faro scan on Fairview Drive, that night
Right.
in
Why
Canton?
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Right. A lot of law enforcement, because I've researched those Faro scans because evidence intrigues me because that's your nuts and bolts of the case. So I've deep dove these Faro scans. They literally, thousands of law enforcements have accessibility to that technology and are using it. So I was really surprised it wasn't used in the Karen Reed case too.
Yeah, and it's so readily available. And this case was way before the Karen Reed case, and it was available then. I'm familiar, very, very familiar with Faro scans. I use it for another industry, and they've been around for a long time.
It's amazing stuff they can do with those.
Yep, it's like recreating the crime scene in 3D, and you have it at your fingertips for the rest of the perpetuity of your data.
And we're going to see just what it's capable of doing when Idaho 4 goes to trial finally, if we ever get there. and don't get paid. She ain't getting there.
All right, so
no scream. Sorry.
You're fine. 48 hours in Baldwin's Cross. There's no redirect. There are no jury questions. So this is a case where the judge is allowing jury questions at the end of each witness, which I did not know happened in Indiana. That's a new one to me. She's asking after every single witness, she asks if there are any jury questions, and the jurors are allowed to submit questions to the witness, and they get passed to the judge, and then the judge discusses them with defense and state.
Oh, Lord. And she would be so irritated with somebody like me because I'm going to have some questions.
Right. Every single witness, you're going to have 7 questions.
I'd be raising my hand. It's me again, Judge Gold. Please don't be nice now.
No, they write them on a piece of paper and they send them down to, there's like a jury liaison that
she'd
helps.
See me writing and she'd probably go, oh, God. Well, here we go again. I'm sorry. You want me to do a thorough job? I'm going to have questions for both sides, not just one.
Right. Then there's a little sidebar. Rosie comes back from the sidebar smiling like he just heard a joke, which is pretty interesting to me.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then the state calls Derek German. That's Libby's dad.
Yeah.
So they do some foundational questions. Where did he live at the time? What was he doing at the time? They lived with the Patties. He and Kelsey and Libby lived with the Patties. And he did odd jobs for his mom, for Becky.
Yep.
He didn't have a full-time job.
He worked for her appraisal business.
Yep. And then they asked about his relationship with Libby. And he said they communicated mostly by text. And do you mean by Snapchat text? And he goes, no, I didn't have Snapchat, which was kind of an amusing. He was an amusing type of guy. He was a large guy physically, and that's mentioned actually later on direct. But yeah, he hell no, I didn't have Snapchat. But they communicated mostly by text, and he said, or he was asked, is that your preferred communication with Libby? He said, no, I would rather that she call me, but she insisted on always texting me, so I'd have to text back.
Yeah.
And then
my kid's just as bad. He's like, I always to text. I'm like, dude, just call me. Just call me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they started talking about, so they drilled down to February of 2017. And So 2 nights before, so 13, yeah, the 2 nights before, Libby had a sleepover at another friend's house the night of the 11th. So the morning of the 12th, he had to go pick her up. And then eventually Abby came to sleep over with Libby at their house, at the German patty house on the night of the 12th.
Yeah.
So
She came over on Sunday night. And I think
yes.
Derek went to pick her up, right? Or did he
Yes.
pick her? Yeah.
You mean to sleep over?
Yeah.
No. Crap, I don't remember. I think I'm getting them mixed up now with Anna's testimony, because Anna may have dropped them off over there. Because originally, so I'm jumping ahead of myself here because this comes up in Anna's testimony later. Originally, the plan was for them to sleep over at Abby's house.
Oh, okay.
At the Williams house, and that was Abby's grandma and step grandpa. So her mom's Anna's mom and stepdad, and they all lived together, and they were going to sleep over there first. And then on the way, like after her mom picked him up, they talked her mom into changing it to a sleepover at Libby's house. So you got to wonder, were they communicating with the Anthony Shots thing? And were they like planning something like, oh my gosh, we've got this lead to meet this hot guy at the Monon High Bridge.
Yeah.
But we're not going to be able to do it if we're over here at my house. Let's switch it over to Libby's house so we have a little bit more freedom. I mean, I'm reading between the lines 100%. It's just a theory, but it's plausible.
There is supposed to be proof of that communication between Abby and Anthony Shots' account the night before, Sunday night, and the morning of, on Monday morning. And according to Keegan Klein, he stated to law enforcement that, yes, I did communicate with Libby and I was supposed to meet them, but didn't. Now, whether or not Keegan's statements are true, nobody damn well knows, because he also claimed his dad did it and threw the gun out into the Wabash, into the river.
Right.
And they did the $1 million search out there. So you got to take everything Keegan says with a grain of salt. But from all reports that we know of, I can't say that I know about that the morning of, but law enforcement has stated Libby was communicating with the Anthony Shots account on Sunday night. Now, what they said to one another and what that entailed, we don't know all of that. That has not been brought out, but they did say she did communicate with that account the night before. So, like what you were saying, because everybody has wondered, was this a crime of opportunity? He happened to be out there. The girls were just out there, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to take my chance and jump on my thrill kill." That I've been wanting to act on this, or were they planning to meet somebody? Yeah, or were they planning to meet someone? The chances are, especially in the area that it's in, that it's going to be people who live in the area or out there, not random interstate stoppers, getting off for a rest and going for a walk. There's going to be locals out there. So why the girls? Why that day? Was it just a random thing? Oh, look, I got the opportunity, I'm taking it. Or were they planning to meet someone? We still don't know for sure either way.
No. And maybe we won't ever know.
Look, if the girls were planning to meet somebody out there, they had to communicate with them somehow.
Right.
About it. It would have went down on Libby's. Exactly. It would be on Libby's phone.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Regardless of who it was they were planning to meet, that would be on Libby's phone. That communication would be there. I don't care if it was your other girlfriend from school, a guy you were interested in, one of your other friends, whatever the case may be, stranger on the internet. If you communicated with someone the night before about meet me out there, or that morning even, because the girls were going to go in there and do the filing and then just came back out again and said, oh, wait, can we go to the bridge? did something prompt them to want to go ahead and go out there? If that communication took place, it's going to be on that phone.
Yeah. And so think about this. You have a big sister that's 17 that has a driver's license that runs you around places, but she's kind of a cool older sister and you're kind of close, and you want to go meet somebody at the Monon High Bridge. Do you want to have your dad, or do you want to have Abby's mom take you to the Monon High Bridge, or do you want to have Kelsey take you to the Monon
No,
High
you're
Bridge?
going to get your sister to do it.
Yep.
And Amy, yeah, I know that Israel Keys very well, and I know serial killers and lots of murdering people. I've been following true crime for 40 years. Yes, absolutely. Spur of the moment kills can happen, but it just doesn't seem to lend itself in this case. I mean, it could have been, but it just doesn't appear that way right now.
Yeah. So she had the sleepover. He had to go pick her up on the sleepover, and then he took her home, and then Abby's mom came to pick her up and picked Abby up, and then took them back to Abby's house to get a bag to take back over. So I'm pretty sure Anna is the one that took them back over to Libby's house for the sleepover at Libby's house the night of the 12th. So then they get up on the 13th. They're doing their girl thing. They're probably chatting with Anthony Schatz. And he had to go run an errand for Becky at 1:20 p.m. So once he leaves, we know from Kelsey that Libby calls Kelsey and says, "Can you take us to the Monon High Bridge?" And Kelsey wants to go see her boyfriend. So she's like, "Sure, I'm going to go drop you off at the Monon High Bridge, and I'm going to keep on going into Delphi, and I'm going to go spend some time with my boyfriend before I have to go to work." Then Libby called him from the Monon High Bridge to ask if he would pick them up. And I don't have a timestamp on there. But he was still running his errand for Becky, so he couldn't go immediately to go pick them up. So we know this was probably, around 3 o'clock?
So wait, you're saying that once they were out there, they asked him about picking them up?
Yes. So this was after, this had to have been after they, well, I don't know.
Because we originally heard, and from the family, that when the girls asked to go to the bridge, they were told, yes, but you have to get a ride home. You got to confirm a ride home. And that's when Libby called her dad and said, hey, if we get a ride out to the bridge, can you pick us up? He said, yes, but it will be later, because he was going out to take some photos of a home that Becky needed to get appraised.
Yes. To the printer.
Yeah.
Or to the printer. So he had to go finish running that errand. And I don't know what time she called him to ask to be picked up from the one on High Bridge, but he went and finished his errand. He did not go past the Hoosier Harvester place. He said he went a totally different direction, so his car would not have been picked up on the camera. Interesting. Then he headed to the Monon High Bridge, and he tried to call them when he was about 2 minutes out. They didn't answer. And then when he got there, he tried to call them again. When he got there, there were other cars that were parked there. He got out and he ran into a dude who was coming back from the Monon High Bridge. And he asked him, this guy's name was David Campbell, have you seen the girls? Guy said no. So at 3:11, after he got there, so that was around 3 o'clock-ish. So then at 3 minutes, then at 3:11, he went wandering down the paths looking for the girls. So he kind of went towards the Monon High Bridge. He kind of went towards the Freedom Bridge, calling, yelling for them. He was driving a white Subaru station wagon. Then he tried calling his mom, tried calling Becky. He sat in his car for 15 minutes. Then he's like, all right, I'm going to go back out and look for him again. And he went back towards the Monon High Bridge. He ran into two kids. And he asked the two kids, he said they were boys. He ran into two boys. So I assume like medium-aged teenagers. if they had seen the girls, and they said no.
Yeah,
And
I forget which account, because I've been following the case for so long, but someone did a recreation video of like Derek's movements, like down the trail, and the guy you're speaking of that he spoke to, "Hey, have you seen these girls?" And where they both walked to, because there's another trail that Derek went down, they weren't there. He came back. He goes, so he looked all around looking for the girls, and they were just nowhere to be found. And it's almost like this all was taking place very quickly,
yeah, and the problem was, since he's a bigger guy, he can't like go down the ravines. He can't like get into the steeper areas and really get off trail to go looking for the girls.
Yeah.
And that came up on direct. She goes, I don't want to like embarrass you, but you're a bigger guy. Would you have been able to get down like the steeper ravine areas? And he's like, no. And I didn't even try. So then he goes back to the parking lot, and then other family members start showing up. So Kelsey and Cody came back, and that's when Kelsey and Cody decided that they could go over the bridge, because he's not going over the bridge. So he sends Kelsey and Cody over the bridge to go looking for him on the south end of the bridge.
Yeah.
And he went back to the parking lot. And then eventually they got asked to go to the sheriff's office and start filling out details. It was still light out. Then after they went to the sheriff's office to fill out the official reports and the missing person reports, then they went back to the Monon High Bridge and they searched till around midnight.
The family did, yeah.
So when they're out there at night, he gets asked, did you see flashlights out there? And at one point in time, he said bunches, and then eventually he like tried to back that off a little bit. I forget. Gosh dang it, I didn't write down the exact word he used, but it was like tons. I think he said there were tons of searchers or people searching.
Yeah, from what we've heard, there was a lot, and Becky has said there was like flashlights forever. Because when you got everybody's going to be out there with their lights on, obviously it's so late and dark, and you can't see nothing out there. There's no street lights and all the things. So there was a lot of searchers in the area, with their lights.
And they specifically asked him, did you see any lights? Well, we'll get to that with the defense. And I don't think they asked him where he saw lights. He just saw flashlights out there.
Yeah.
But it was too steep for him to like head down towards the actual creek. He never got anywhere close to the creek because it was just too steep. The terrain was too steep. They do say he saw lights south of the water. So that is a point that McClellan wanted to make, that the state wanted to make, is that he only saw lights south of the water. So nobody was north of the Deer Creek, which is where the girls were found, searching for the girls, according to the state and according to this testimony. He didn't see any lights north of the water. But on February 14th, so the next day, they go into the police station, and all of the people who are searching are divided up into teams. They're given maps of their search areas, and his search area is basically the same one he did the day before, the night before. He basically searches on the north end of the bridge as far as he can go, as limited by the terrain. And that's it on February 14th. They parked at the CPS building on that day, on February 14th, and they walked to the Monon High Bridge, which is interesting because this is the first time I've heard them bring testimony of the CPS building into it and point out to us where the CPS building is. Apparently it's been demolished now and it's not there anymore.
Yeah, it's no longer there.
Yeah. Then there was a searcher that was coming up behind him when they were like getting close to the cemetery. And they were like at the edge of the top of the ravine that was south of the cemetery. And this searcher that was with them, her name was Melissa, and I couldn't catch her last name. It drives me nuts, but She came up behind him. She was one of the volunteer searchers. And she's like, are you going to go down there? And he's like, I can't do that. So she goes down the ravine, and then like within minutes there it's so he heads back to the trailhead, turns around, comes back, and by the time he gets back, everybody knows that the girls have been found. So I'm guessing it's this Melissa chick that found the girls. She went down the ravine from the cemetery, and she's the one that
Well,
found
that contradicts what Kelsey has stated in the past in interviews.
And what's that?
So they were down searching the next day when it was daylight. And from what I understood her to say, it was a guy who he had his phone, but he had like zoomed in, and the way the terrain is, it's a hilly. So he sees some deer out there, and they see the deer, and now maybe it was a female that found them first because she could have been closer to the scene, but somebody calls out, but the deer kind of ruckus away, but that the deer were right there by the girls. And that's when people,
that makes no sense to me
no.
As somebody that lives in Indiana and I've been deer hunting, deer are not going to be anywhere near that scene. I'm sorry. That doesn't track for me.
No, and I've been around deer my entire life, and they just, I've come up on deer. I've got some that hang out in the backyard damn near. But there are some deer out there that will come all the way up in your yard and stand there and look right at you and be like, hey, what's up?
Not in Indiana.
Some that won't run. It depends. Like my dad is in his 70s, and he could tell you some stories. There's some deers that do not seem to be afraid and will just look you right in your eye and be like, what are you going to do? And there's some that will hear a noise or a smell and they're out of there. They're not going to stick around. Right.
That's 99% of Indiana deer are that way.
Right. And that's the way it is here. Most times they hear a noise or catch a scent, they're out of there. But that's not always the case. But that's what she said. When they zoomed in on the camera, they could see some deer standing out there, and that they allegedly weren't far from where the girls were found, the deer were. And that's when people began to speculate, was there animal hairs? Because we heard some rumblings about hair possibly being at the scene early on, but people chalked that up to being animal hair. And then people had to wonder, oh, okay, so they're digging up Rick Allen's backyard. He had a dead cat buried back there. They're going to compare that dead cat's hair to the hair that was found at the crime scene. That's the kind of rumors we've had to deal with for years.
Right. And they were actually discussed today by all of us sitting outside waiting to see if we were going to get a seat inside. We talked about a lot of things.
Oh, I'm sure, right? I mean, there's so much to God. You got so many rabbit holes you can go down with these cases, but especially one of this nature.
Yes. Yeah, and it seems like if the police investigation had been more thorough, more complete, then maybe we wouldn't have to be speculating quite as much. Maybe.
No, and if Rick Allen is the guy, and they can without a doubt prove that in court, I'm still going to be mad because for 5 years you put the family and your community through straight hell over your fumbling of a case. And has that been the intent to hide all along, was your bad investigation? Because you don't put a community and a family through that much for 5 years over a misfiled tip. Period. You don't do it. You shouldn't. I'd be upset either way if it was my family member out there and they still were able to prove to me, yes, this is the guy 110% without a doubt. I'm still going to be upset with you because how the hell could you not know that from the beginning? If it was this simple, all you had to do was know that tip existed 5 years earlier and you could have caught the guy right then, according to you, law enforcement. And everything that I have a problem with is things law enforcement has told me, not rumors I've heard on the internet,
Yeah. And we're about to hear a lot more from law enforcement, and I'm not sure we're going to hear anything new. I mean, I hope we do, because it may help clear the situation up one way or another, but I'm not holding my breath. I'm not holding my
Right.
breath.
No.
All right. So that was basically the last question they had for him. That he didn't see any flashlights on the north side of Deer Creek on the night of February 13th. Then at 15:24, so 3:24 p.m., Baldwin begins his cross. And he begins by talking about the Mears Farm drop-off point for the trails. And he says, so if you get to that trail intersection, and you turn left, where do you go? And if you turn right, where do you go? Well, if you turn left, you go to the Freedom Bridge. If you turn right, you go to the Monon High Bridge, right? And at 3:25, did you see another guy out there? Yes, at 3:25, he saw a man named Dave, who said he saw. This is 3:25 p.m. This Dave guy, and I didn't catch the last name again because the audio was so horrible. There's some guy that he runs into named Dave who claims that he saw a couple that was taking pictures in the area of the Monon High Bridge. This is at 3:25. So you've got a photographer and you've got a couple out there at the Monon High Bridge or near the Monon High Bridge taking pictures. And this is supposedly when the girls are being murdered. Like that's the timeline, right? 3:25 p.m. ish.
Yeah. Well, the timeline is getting a little crazy with the testimony that's come out, and or not. Well, we've only had one day.
No,
But,
the state's timeline. I mean, the state's timeline
yeah,
is
yeah.
this was almost the exact time that they were supposedly being murdered by Rick in the woods, was right around 3:25.
Yeah, right after Weber got home at the end of the drive and startled him,
So,
according to Nick McClellan.
right. So
Interrupted him. Let me use his words. Interrupted.
Right. So nobody hears any screaming. Nobody who was on the trails heard any screaming. I think somebody testified, or there was a police report that somebody heard screaming in the middle of the night that night.
I've heard that as well, but I've not seen confirmation. So if this
Right.
Snapchat video, I mean, if the video of Bridge Guy started at 2:13, and these girls weren't killed until 3:30, what was going on between all that time?
Right.
Between 2:30 and 3:30, and if they weren't allegedly not essayed, what was going on?
Well, I think Baldwin's point on this is that there were people in and out of there all afternoon long. There were people in and out of around the Monona High Bridge area. Okay, and people, for the record, if you're from out of town, it's not Monon High Bridge. I heard so many people say that today. I just like almost screamed. It's a Monon. It's the Monon Railroad. It's the Monon High Bridge. There's actually a town in Indiana called Monon, Indiana. Monon.
Monon, the Monon High Bridge. Okay,
Yes.
I've tried to make sure I say it right.
Now you have been educated by a Hoosier. Actually, I'm a Boilermaker. But anyway, I don't even want to look on how that game's going. I don't want to know.
Oh, I don't watch games. I don't.
No,
watch
we have
baseball.
Oregon, which probably should be the number one team in the country, in town tonight, playing on a Friday night.
Foosball's the devil. Isn't that what's his name's mom says in that one movie? That Adam Sandler movie where his mom says foosball's the devil. But she's talking about football.
Right.
I always say that.
Waterboy.
In the winter, I don't like winter. I hate winter. There's nothing good about it. I don't care what nobody says. And I'm forced to hear about football. So I don't care for winter.
That's funny today because the Journal and Courier, why can't I remember his name?
Anyway, and look, I'm in that area where everybody likes to holler, "Roll Tide." Ugh. Roll away, please. Go Gators. I got to represent. I'm in Florida.
That's the end of cross-examination. There's no there's no redirect, no recross. And she lets us all out for a break at 15:40 hours. 15:40, is that right? That's not right. Yeah, okay. 3:40. Then when we come back, let me make sure my pages are in order because I got in a hurry and I stopped numbering my pages. Yes. Okay. Now I'm on page 9. At 15:57, the jury returns. Anna Williams is called. So Abby's mom, they start asking her some foundational questions. And one of the first questions is, if besides what's your name and how do you spell it, is describe Abby to us. And she just tears up and she starts breaking down. And it's just so heartbreaking that I got tears in my eyes too.
Yeah. Badass American, you won't hear either one of us as creators say anything about those families being involved, because that's ridiculous for people to be out there talking that kind of smack. I mean, there's nothing to even suggest that, except for rumors and speculation. And it's sad that it comes to that with a lot of these cases. And here's another thing. If the phone was turned off, okay, so I watch a lot of cases. So Brian Koberger's phone went off radar for 2 solid hours, turned off. But the cell phone data will show if that phone was ever turned off manually. We'll know when it was turned back on and things of that nature. Phone pings happening across towers and things like that. So phone records would tell if that phone was actually turned off or if the battery died even. Your phone will tell you a whole lot of stuff you would never think about. Sometimes your phone's going to tell on you about, or things you thought you've done to hide what you've done, but the phone's going to tell in the end. Especially as far as technology today goes. Now, they had all Rick Allen's stuff in the beginning. They took phones from his home as well when they did the search warrant. Some old phones he had there. But as far as we can tell in any of the court filings, there was nothing on any of those phones to connect him to the girls or other things that may or may not have occurred out there. So yeah, it's interesting to find out, because we need to know if that phone was ever turned off, and the phone data will tell me if that phone was ever turned off or not. If it was, we got a problem, Yeah, you would think about, right, Dizzy, leave the phone at home. And I said the same thing in the Koberger case. Why not just leave it by the nightstand on the bed and be like, oh shit, I forgot my phone. Sorry, my bad. I went out for my drive because I couldn't sleep like I usually do, and I left my phone at home. Problem solved. I don't know. I'm into some phone. I'm into some evidence, man. Bring it.
Yeah. So they start asking Anna about Abby, and it's a tough moment to start. It's a tough moment to start.
Libby let Abby use her thumbprint to activate the phone. What?
You can't. Could you in 2017 have multiple biometrics to unlock the same phone?
Yeah, I mean,
that's an interesting theory.
Yeah. Because if Libby had her phone set up with biometrics, it wouldn't recognize Abby's print. It would only recognize Libby's.
Yeah, that doesn't
And
make
I don't
sense.
have that on my phone. My phone is not getting my fingerprint.
All right, let's keep going with Anna's testimony. So she has a full-time job. I missed what that was. I couldn't hear it. But she was the part-time bartender, she said, about every other weekend at the dock. At the dock. The dock was the bar that she bartended at about every other weekend, which is interesting because she's an attractive gal, and she was attractive 7 years ago. So she probably got a lot of attention as a bartender at the dock.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that played at all in anything to do with the murders, but it's just an interesting thing to keep in the back of your mind, right? That's when they say, can you describe Abby? And that's when she started crying. She was helpful, funny. She was smart. She had a small group of friends, so she wasn't as outgoing as, this is my words, not Anna's.
Yeah, Anna, I'm sorry, Joe. Riley, yes, Anna is Abby's mom.
Yes, Anna Williams. Sorry, I didn't clarify that. So Anna's mom, they lived in northern Michigan, and they moved down. They moved down to Delphi because she was living with her dad. And when Abby was a baby, or very small at least, they moved down to Delphi because her dad got transferred to a job in Lafayette. So they all moved down together, grandparents and her and Abby, and she didn't have any siblings. So her friendship with Libby was like huge in her life. Had to have been.
Yeah.
And she had a smaller group of friends. She wasn't as outgoing as Libby was. She didn't have a cell phone. And if Anna had known that Abby wanted to go out to the Monon High Bridge and try and cross it, she would not have given her permission to do that. She would have forbade it.
No, she would have.
She said that was not okay with her, and if she had known about it, she wouldn't have permitted it.
Yeah, I've heard her say that before, but she wasn't being like hateful toward the other family. She was just being honest when she was asked questions.
Right. She was more protective of her. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. She was.
Right. Well, it's hard to blame a 17-year-old big sister for dropping them off if they ask them to go out on the trails. I mean, I wouldn't blame her at all for that. That's just what big sisters do.
Yeah.
Big brothers, big sisters, that's what they do.
Yeah.
So originally, okay, here's back to the story I said earlier. Originally, they were going to spend the night at Abby's. Then on literally driving to Abby's house, they talked Anna into instead spending the night at Libby's. And I still think that may have to do with their Anthony Schatz communications and them maybe being able to have more freedom at Libby's than at Abby's.
How do you know that Abby was using Libby's phone? I mean, I see you keep repeating that, so I'm assuming you want us to see it and acknowledge it. So I'm just gonna have to go ahead and ask, what do you mean by that? Because why does it got to do with anything? Hey, Rebecca, welcome in. Good to see you.
Hi, Rebecca. Yeah, very good to see you.
Yeah.
All right. So she took them over to Libby's house, and then she had to go in to work at 5:30. Oh, no, she had to go into work. And the girls called her at one point in time and said, "Can you come pick us up?" And she said, "Well, I have to work, and I have to work through the dinner shift. So either I come pick you up now," which was shortly after they had been dropped off, "or I pick you up after dinner." So they agreed that if they were still out there on the trails after dinner, which would have been really, really late, and on February 13th in Indiana, I mean, well after dark, then she would pick them up after dinner. So obviously the girls then worked on getting another ride. They must have called Libby's dad and been like, "Okay, can you come pick us up?" So they were coordinating the whole thing. It sounded like a coordinated thing. They were trying to find one of the parents to be able to pick them up after Kelsey dropped them up, because Kelsey was going to go see her boyfriend and then she was going to go to work.
Yeah.
So she got a call at 5:30, and actually she got several calls at 5:30 at her job, and she missed calls from Becky. She missed several calls from Becky, and she explained them as she either didn't see them at the time that Becky was actually calling her, or they ended up looking like dropped calls.
Yes, and yeah, we know that Kelsey dropped the girls off, and then she went to her boyfriend's house for a while, and then she went to work. That information's been out there for years now. And I guess I see your point, Banter, that you're thinking that maybe Abby turned that phone back on at 4:30 in the morning in the woods. But yes, we've known that Kelsey did go to her boyfriend's first and then drop the girls off, and Derek had planned to pick them up.
Right.
Unfortunately, he was, you know.
He had to go finish his errand before he could get out there. But if something was going on at the time that he had gotten there, if something was going on the south end of the bridge and then down the hill, then he wouldn't have been able to see it anyway from where he was on
No,
the north end of the bridge.
no. Because all he's going to be able to do is stand there and look down the bridge and see that he can't see them on the bridge, right?
Exactly.
But he's not going to be able to see down that hill and beyond that. That's
Right.
impossible to do from standing down there.
Right. So then she was asked, this is one of the last questions by the state. Have there ever been any prior incidents where the girls didn't answer their phones and you were worried about them, concerned for them because they weren't answering their phones? And mom says yes. Anna says yes. There was a time when they went to a swim meet at the high school and I was supposed to take them some money for concessions or something, and they didn't answer their phones. Sorry about that, guys. Hold on one second.
You're good. Yeah, Banter, I understand what you're saying because, I mean, if there is speculation out there, and it is purely speculation, that Abby may not have been unalived or killed at the same time. So, yeah, could she have turned that phone back on? But, you know, at some point, Libby had that phone, taking the Snapchat picture, taking the video. So, I guess during the time they were in the woods, Abby ends up with the phone. And still, the perpetrator doesn't care about this phone, doesn't care that it's left under their body, doesn't care to think that that phone could get, you know, could lead people here. I don't know why the phone was ever left there with the girls. So if you got a smart perpetrator, they're not going to just leave that phone there. They're going to take it and destroy it, throw it somewhere, whatever. Get rid of it as fast as they can, more than likely. But could it have been that way that Abby turned it back on? Yeah, I guess it could have.
Yeah, we'll have to see how the state's experts play it out, because that doesn't jive with how Cecil described how things were
Exactly.
Cecil, Cicero.
Cicero. And
yes.
From what we understand, Banter, it was Libby that was up moving around that crime scene even after she was fatally injured.
Yeah, Abby didn't move. Cicero testified that Abby did not move at all.
No. Nope.
Anyway, all right, let's move past that. So they talked about the prior incident where they went to the swim meet and then they worried the crap out of her mom, and she ended up finding him and chewing him out and being like, "Don't do that to me again." And then Baldwin only has one question on cross. Describe Abby's voice. And among other things, I think the thing that he's fishing for is she had a high-pitched voice when she got excited. Her voice was high-pitched when she got excited. So I think he's building a case to say that nobody out there ever heard the girls screaming.
Right.
So what actually happened out there?
Right, because if you got two girls, and even if there is a gun and it's being held on you and you're strong-willed, natural instinct may be to just clam up and be real quiet, or one may be just scream. You know, it's a natural reaction. It's hard to gauge how they would have acted or how they would have behaved with a gun trained on them at that point. But you would think that maybe at least one would scream. People have speculated that Libby tried to get away and different things of that nature before they got across that creek. But you got to convince me they went across that creek. Because I'm telling you, the minute I saw that drive down there, I was like, whoa, that's a little weird. But there's so much that we don't know about the crime scene still, and there's things that we have learned about the crime scene through the experts' testimony that's come out in documents so far. And Joe and I try to keep anything we talk about like based out of what we see in the documents. Now, I see you saying that the girls sometimes, would go places they didn't say they were going or whatever, because being teens, I understand that too. But I haven't heard reports about these two girls going out and lying about where they were going all the time and things of that nature. You know, I've never heard that anywhere.
Right. So that was it. That was it for Anna. And then there was no redirect. So there was no jury questions. So then they had a sidebar. And then they called up Carroll County Deputy Mitchell Catron, who is a 12-year member of the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, 12-year deputy. He's been through the Indiana State Law Enforcement Academy, or whatever they call it. They start with Exhibit 5, which is the aerial photo, and this is actually kind of cool. On that big, huge monitor that they played the video earlier, they bring up a photo, and a large photo of the area. And because it's a touchscreen monitor, and it's probably a good 72-inch monitor, if not bigger, because it's a smart monitor, you can put your fingertips on the screen and zoom in and zoom out.
Yeah.
And it took him a few questions to like get the hang of it. Between him and McClelland, they got it figured out. So he started up on the witness stand and gave his name, and then eventually he gets called down to stand in front of this monitor, and they're zooming in and out, and they're talking all about what happened the night that Deputy Catron was called out to the scene of this missing child report. So they just start with the basics, like show us on this map on the screen, County Road 300 North, Hoosier Heartland Highway, the Freedom Bridge, where the Freedom Bridge crosses the Hoosier Heartland. Show us the CPS building. Show us the Mears Farm entrance. Show us the Hoosier Harvester. So we get through all that, and it takes them longer than it should, but they're getting used to this smart monitor. So I'll give them a pass on that. Then at about 6 p.m. on February 13th, 2017, they get a call from somebody who says, we may have missing children. So he calls back, and it's Mike Patty, and talks to Mike Patty, who says, we can't find our girls. 6 p.m. 6 p.m. Yeah, about 6 p.m. the call came in. And the Carroll County Sheriff's Office and Dispatch Office is really close to this location. It's like 3 minutes from the Hoosier Heartland, or 30 seconds from the Hoosier Heartland. I mean, it's like half a mile. So he drives out to this area. Should I pull this area up on Google Map or on Google Earth?
Yeah, you can do that. I'm going to answer a question real quick for Riley.
Go ahead, because it's going to take a few minutes.
Okay. Riley, from the reports I've heard from today from people who were in the courtroom, that he did look well. He was allowed to wear, regular street clothes, khaki pants and a shirt and a tie. But they said he looked healthy. He looked to be clear-headed and was engaging with his defense attorneys during the trial. So able to participate in his defense. So he was looking a lot better than what we have seen in the past.
I can confirm that report.
Yeah. And I don't know about 2017 Banter, how they would do things, or how it's done in Indiana, but in Florida, you have access to computers, and a lot of the state prisoners here are able to email with their family members. It's all monitored, of course, but that's how they do their communication these days. Now that's in Florida, so I don't know anything about, the prisons over there in Indiana. From what I understand about them, they may not have given them anything. So, yeah.
It's going to take a couple minutes to pull this up, but I think it's probably important to be able to follow along with.
Yeah, it is.
Because in this testimony, we're going to see that there's a timeline glitch, and this is the timeline glitch that I don't think Auger worked hard enough at pointing out. She tried it twice. She tried it on cross, and she tried it on recross, because with this guy there was direct, there was cross, there was redirect, and then there was recross. And then there wasn't a redirect, but there was a Nick McClelland, point of clarification. Oh, because there was a jury, there were 2 jury questions from this, and I didn't write them down because they didn't get answered. All right, I'm almost got this down here. Here we go. Oop.
And yes, Banter, Rick Allen did say he was wearing very similar clothing to what we know the bridge guy was wearing. And his wife also told law enforcement when they interviewed her that yes, he did have a blue Carhartt jacket, and they did find that jacket in his home when they did the search warrant. But we've not heard anything else about it on any filings yet. If they were tested, it was, well, I'm going to say if I was law enforcement, it would have been tested for any kind of DNA left on it. But, had it been washed in 5 years, we don't know. There are similarities between Bridge Guy and Rick Allen. I will not deny that. But I can also say there's similarities between him, Bridge Guy, and one of the alternate suspects. It's clear as day. I swear, if you put the image of these 2 guys up, the alternate suspect and Rick Allen, and even the sketch, the alternate suspect looks more like the sketch than Rick Allen did. So
I'm having internet lag issues. My Google Maps is like half loaded and half
are
not
you
loaded.
having my swamp signal affect you?
Yes.
Hey, I heard they're putting in fiber optics out here in the countryside. I was like, what? I'm just running with what I got. Most of the time it works okay. I've had a few mishaps with it, but
All right,
it is what it is.
Trying to find that drive. Okay, there's that access drive.
Now, you're right. The sketches aren't a photo, but we were force-fed those sketches for years and told how they would melt together and become Richard Allen. We were told over and over by Doug Carter, look for these sketches. Look for the people in your lives or your friends, your neighbors, anybody you may know that resembles these sketches. Then we were told, disregard older bridge guy and only look for younger bridge guy. And if you go to the FBI website right now and look up Libby German, you're going to see young bridge guy sketches still there. So if they don't want us to look at their sketches, they shouldn't have put them down our throats for all those years. And now they're irrelevant. That's just a hard pill to swallow. And I'm not the kind of person who comes out the gate and goes after law enforcement or thinks, oh, they're always wrong, got the wrong guy. I don't ever think that way. This case developed that way. And trust me, I remember what I was doing the day these little girls were reported missing on CNN. I remember what I was doing in my house that day because I stopped and turned to look at that TV and I was like, oh no, not 2 little girls missing in the damp what? And then I have followed the case since that day. And nothing about this case has ever made any sense. And I wanted to believe wholeheartedly that person they were showing me in that video. At first, we didn't even know where the video came from. My mind went to trail cam, deer cams, because we got trail cams all over the place out here. And then we find out, no, it didn't come from a trail cam. It came from the video of a phone that the victim had in her hand, which made it even more crazy. So I promise you, all the questions I have came straight because of law enforcement, what they have and haven't told us. And the confusion they've caused.
So you want to hear,
go ahead.
You want to hear a crazy Rick Allen trail cam story?
Yes.
So we're going to get into a discussion about the Brad Weber property, which is here at the end of the access trail that goes under the Monon High, or the access drive that goes under the Monon High Bridge. Right? This is Brad Weber's property right here. Early in the morning, you said BW. They must have just mentioned him by initials, but it's Brad Weber. That's his property. That was his property at the time. I don't know if it still is. I haven't checked land records.
Yeah.
So supposedly Rick Allen was caught on trail cam 2 days before wearing a backpack.
Where'd that
And
information come from?
so this is the guy that's from Peru
Mm-hmm.
that knows about the Kleins, and it's not verifiable. I have no way to verify it. So this is I don't know if I even hesitate to use it, but supposedly this property has the outbuildings, and in the outbuildings is like a man cave with a
Mm-hmm.
pool table in it.
Yeah, it was searched by law enforcement.
No, well, not on the initial search. It wasn't. He testified today, so we're going to get into the testimony
Okay, because I know they did serve a search
Katrin.
warrant on that property at some point.
Yes, and there's a pool table in one of those outbuildings on his property, and the people that were in a pool league in Peru included Richard Allen and Tony Klein.
Klein was on a pool league with Rick Allen?
Yes, the owners of a bar went back in their records and found them in the same pool league.
Wow. If that's true, that makes sense.
Yes, and there was a pool table in this man cave in the outbuilding on this property, and a lot of those people would come there and hang out and just chill, and Richard Allen knew about it and would utilize that as a quote unquote man cave at the time. So that's the hot gossip that I heard today, and I'm not a huge gossip person, but I'm telling you, the person that told me this told it to me with veracity and not with like a gossipy type of, oh, I'm telling you some inside stuff. He's from Peru. He's known the Kleins for several years, doesn't like them, but knows them, and said that he knows the people at the place of employment where Tony Klein worked, and he got turned in for CP for sharing CP at his place of employment. And the only reason he didn't go to jail also was because they couldn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. They couldn't gather the evidence to charge him along with Keegan.
So okay, so the Webbers knew of Rick Allen because of this pool league, and Rick Allen knew of the Webbers because of this pool league. Had he ever been to the Weber home and hung out in that pool room?
Yeah,
and so
according to this guy, yes.
Okay, and so then the trail cam sees Rick Allen walking around a couple days before the crimes with a backpack on.
Yes. And the rumor is that potentially he had somebody else picked out as a target, and it didn't work out that day because she had a regular routine where she would walk around the Monona High Bridge trails on a regular basis, and she changed her schedule that day and left him hanging, supposedly. It's interesting the things you hear when you go to an event like this, because
but that could be one of the witnesses now that we're talking about that described certain images. Okay, now I got a rabbit hole. Thanks a lot. But because people have tried to find a connection between Allen and the Kleins, you know what I mean?
He says absolutely he knows the owners of this bar, and they went back in their records and they showed him the records of when Rick Allen and Tony Klein were in the same pool league.
Okay, so now I'm going to have to wonder, did they ever show that to law enforcement? Because if I was law enforcement, I'd want to know that information. You know what I mean? Because that could be, like I said, I don't know if Rick Allen's the guy or not. I just know that there's weird things about this investigation. So I'm open to believing whatever's out there. And if they can prove that, then that does create the tie between Klein and Allen, because many have wondered and speculated if Keegan Klein was communicating with those girls and knew they were going to be out there, then how the hell did Rick Allen know they were going to be out there?
Right.
Because Klein told him they would be out there.
According to this guy, Maybe he didn't. Maybe he was looking for another victim and just happened to be upon them. But that this was not a crime of happenstance. None of us believe
Yeah,
it.
I mean, are you going to do away? Okay, so you already have one person in mind. Are you going to be so overcome with the urge and the need to want to get your
Right.
thrills off
It's
that
kind
you're
of
going to take that risk, right, for 2 victims versus 1?
right. It's kind of contradictory theories. So either they were connected and they knew they were coming, or they weren't. And
Banter, there was a law enforcement was called to their home one time that we were aware of, and no charges were filed against Rick Allen. And then a law enforcement recommended that Kathy take him in for evaluation at the hospital. That's all we know. You speak as if you know them or know things that I don't know. But we have heard that is an official police report that one time the police were called. We don't know all of the details behind that call, what was actually going on and happening. But, there's a lot of people that get the cops called on them occasionally. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not but that's like the only thing in this guy's background is, yes, there was that one call made to the authorities to come to his home that one night. And then he had multiple speeding tickets in the past. Other than that, Rick Allen has no history of anything criminal.
all right, back to the facts, because that was just rumors, and it kind of feels icky to talk about it. But
Yeah.
this guy was like, he was speaking with veracity. All right,
Yeah.
let's see what the road names are.
I mean, yeah, you can be convinced of what, I mean, and that's fine. Not you. I mean, the guy that was telling you, you know what I
Right.
mean? He
Right.
he could wholeheartedly have seen that and just been telling you. I mean, not just telling you that, but having a conversation with you about it,
Right. So let's go to Katrin's testimony. So he says he came over to 625 West, and he went up 625 West to this access road that goes all the way around to the Weber property.
Yeah.
And at some point in time, his very first stop was right here at 625 West, where it goes under. Let me turn that layer off. Now that we know where 625 West is, that goes under the Monon High Bridge. Right here. So he stops there. He says he gets out and looks around for like 5 to 7 minutes. And then he continued on down the private road down to the Weber place. And if he said he just pulled into the driveway in front of the house. He made contact with Brad Weber. Brad Weber's like, "What are you doing over here?" He's like, "I'm looking for some lost kids. Do you mind if I look around?" Yeah, okay, look around. So he gets out and he looks around, and I can't see the map where he looks around. He just kind of wanders around for a few minutes, just like casually looking around the Weber property. Doesn't go into any buildings, doesn't check any of them out. Did not look in the barn or the outbuildings. Then he supposedly left the scene around 6:30. His normal shift was 6 to 6, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. He left about a half hour after the end of his shift. He said he didn't know that at that time there were people searching over around the Monon High Bridge. And he also says he didn't see any flashlights. He didn't hear any people yelling. He heard nothing. He heard nothing and he saw nothing.
Yeah.
He went over here to the Weber house, and he, at the end of it, half hour after the end of the shift, he turned around and went home. He literally went and drove home. So at 16:36 hours, OJ gets to cross him. So she says, you left the Carroll County Sheriff's Office about between 5:22 to 5:25. Yes. And then you drove 3 minutes to County Road 625. So that's down here This is County Road 625 right here,
Yeah.
625 West. So it was only about 3 minutes to get from the Carroll County Sheriff's Office to 625. And then he arrived according to the CAD system. So these are CAD system reports that look at that ravine right there. Anyway,
Yeah.
So he arrived at the Monon High Bridge underpass at 5:47 per the CAD system. So he calls into the office, says, I'm on scene and going to check things out. He stops for 5 to 7 minutes, he estimates. He said, don't quote me on that, but that's my estimate based on my recollection. And then he said, so after 5 to 7 minutes, like I said, he goes over here, looks around for about the same time. He said, as long as it takes to like walk this way, look both ways, and walk back to his squad car and then leave. So that's like maybe another 10 minutes, maybe. So that's 5:47 plus 7 minutes is 5:55 plus 10 minutes is 6:05. Per the CAD system, at 6:18, he reported that he was on private trails looking. That's at 6:18. And she said, well, what do you mean by on private trails looking? And he said, oh, well, that must mean that I was under the Monon High Bridge and I was looking at private trails that were off of that area. And then, yes, he says it would have been near the Monon High Bridge. And when he left at 6:30, it was dark and he didn't see any flashlights or any people. But here's the thing, is she said, so you stopped again on your way out to look under the Monon High Bridge? And he said, no, I only stopped under the Monon High Bridge once on my way in. And what she should have said at that point in time was, well, then how does the CAD system show you as looking on private trails at 6:18 p.m. around the Monon High Bridge if you didn't stop by the Monon High Bridge again? There's a timeline discrepancy here where he puts himself, per the CAD system, on private trails looking. She said, would that have been around the Brad Weber property? He said, no, that would have been over by the Monon High Bridge. And she did not press him on that issue. What did he mean? What did he mean after he was already headed out? Because he said he left around 6:30. So he's looking on private trails, looking for about 12 minutes. Where is he looking during that 12 minutes? Because he said he was already done at the Brad Weber house, and quote unquote on private trails would not mean he was looking around the Weber house. Where was he looking for those 12 minutes before he left the scene at 6:18 p.m.?
Yeah.
It's a mystery. And I have no reasonable way to explain it, and neither did he. And she really didn't press him enough on it, because she came back on recross, and her timeline when she came back on recross was completely screwed up. She was going all the way back to like when he left the Carroll County Sheriff's Office at 5:20 something. And she's like,
well, maybe they'll get more. Yeah, maybe they will get, hit that home a little more as the trial progresses and questioning and all that. But you would think just.
Here's the thing, is she went back to the timeline of when he was leaving the Carroll County Sheriff's Office around 5:22 to 5:25. And she said, so you were arriving on scene at 5:25? And he said, yes. So he completely agreed with all of her messed up timeline on the recross. Like she went back a whole hour, and he agreed. I think
they're going to have there's going to be a lot of timeline confusion in this case, even from what we've heard today, about the defense claiming Rick Allen's phone is going to show that he left there at 2:15, according to them. And if they can prove that, then how in the hell was he being filmed on that bridge at 2:13?
Right.
Because 2 minutes later, you're in your car and you're gone, and you were just You know, it just doesn't make any sense. So they're really going to have to break that timeline down because it's important, and all those key things mean everything to this case. Because if you want to place him there and in the woods doing this, you got to do better about it. You know, you got to show it. Um, having the video is not going to be enough because it depends on what all that 43 seconds can tell us, you know, that we haven't seen yet. And then other than that, all we think they have at this point is that unspent round. And they kept Weber's gun for 6 months because law enforcement says they could not inconclusively rule that bullet out from coming from other guns. So why did they keep Weber's gun for 6 straight months if they were convinced that it didn't come from his gun?
Right.
And then 5 years later, you got Rick Allen arrested, and oh wait, it came from his gun though. Well, I'm gonna need to hear from the experts' testimony about that. I don't need to hear from cops or state troopers. I need to hear from weapons experts that can tell me and show me how they can conclude that unspent round came from that man's gun. Because if you can prove it to me, that's huge. That makes a difference. But if you get up there and your more convincing witness tells me it didn't come from that gun, then I got an issue with that. And you know, it's going to come down to what evidence they do have and don't have in the end, no matter what any of our theories are as to who or who wasn't involved out there. You know, and law enforcement's the one that continued to say more than one person's involved. We didn't make that up either. We didn't dream it up. Y'all told us that. You know, so I'm going to have to go by that unless you're going to come out tomorrow and tell me, oh, forget that information. We don't want you to think about that no more. Well, that you still said it. It's already out there, you know, just like your sketches, your sketchy sketches.
Right.
Look, any criminal about to plan a crime is going to be trying to wear gloves if you think about it. I was just responding to a comment there. I mean, I put myself, if I'm going to be a criminal and I'm about to go out and try to commit crimes, I'm going to try to hide who I am no matter what, which would mean I need some gloves. It's kind of like Crime 101. Hell, we've heard cases where the perpetrator shaves their entire body because they didn't want to leave a hair behind, you know, things of that nature. I've watched every forensic files known to man that ever came on TV, I think. Learned a lot from that show. There's just there's do's and don'ts, but you got smart people and not so smart people in this world. You got really smart criminals and not so smart criminals in this world, you know?
Right. True that.
It's just, it's going to come down to what evidence they actually have. And we can speculate about what they have, but going by what we've seen in court filings, it appears they have some DNA, which that's been out there for quite a while. Law enforcement told Barbara McDonald in an interview, and I have that clip, we have DNA. But they didn't know whose it was at that point. And so you got someone's DNA out there. If it doesn't match Rick Allen, who the heck does it match? Is that your other suspect you know for a fact was at that scene? You just don't know who the hell it was. And if that's true, then Rick Allen, if he's the guy, he knows somebody else was involved because he would have been there with them. But yet in his 61 confessions, it was just him, lone wolf. Why did he not name the other person? Was he too scared to? I just don't, this case is insane. But we're seeing timeline issues already developing.
Yeah. There have been issues developed from day one or from night one. So my very first issue with this case, and I've been obviously watching it from minute one when the girls first went missing.
Yeah.
Was Tobe Lesenby calling off the search about 11:45 p.m., maybe closer to midnight, somewhere in there, saying, "We don't believe the girls are in danger."
No, that's exactly what he said. They chalked it
That
up to they may have ran away.
that is just like misstep number one from
It's slapping a family in the face. Yeah, we'll come out and we'll look around. Oh, we don't see them, but you know what? We're just gonna go home and get us some rest. We'll come back at daylight. They're probably gonna be fine.
right. Yeah,
Excuse me? No, sir. You stay your ass out here. You ain't, I am.
yeah. Katrin going out there for about 45 minutes and just kind of giving it the once over is just so disgusting.
It is ridiculous when you've got these woods and two girls who are missing. They could have been lost. They could be cold. They could, like, their parents were saying that. You know, we saw an interview with Abby's mom the very next day, and that's what she was saying, was going through her mind. Were they cold? Were they hungry? Were they okay? You know, the not knowing. Could you imagine not knowing where your child was all night long and knowing it's cold and knowing that the authorities you count on to help you just said, no, we're going home for the night. Our guys need rest. Everybody's going to need rest, sir, but we got two little girls missing. As a parent, I wouldn't have not stopped. I would have been out there all night long. You're going to have to bring me a bunch of blankets. You're going to have to force me out of those woods. This mama bear is not leaving this site until my child is found. But that's just me. I'm not throwing shade at anybody, but I'm agreeing with you. The authorities shouldn't have called that off like that. I've not seen that in any other cases. They go and they can't go anymore.
Right.
And there's usually so many volunteers that come out to help. That's just the way it is, you know? And there were odd things about this case from the beginning that just didn't make sense. Like, I had a hard time thinking that nobody in this tiny town recognizes this guy in this video they're showing us. And like I said, I'm in a tiny town. I'm side-eyeing every dude in this town until they're caught. Especially if you looked anything similar to what that guy in that video looked like. I might even follow you to your house and sit down the road and watch you for a few weeks because I'm on to you. I mean, there's all kind of things, you know, and that's what I'm saying. Even if they can prove without a doubt at this point, Rick Allen did it, y'all still messed up, law enforcement, and you can't say you didn't. And you owe that family, both families and those girls, apologies for your missteps in this case. And then I have to wonder, is your little cover up just to show that hey, we botched this and we didn't mean to? Okay, I get it. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But if you did, own it, man. Own it. Do better next time. Make change. We had to force change in Florida multiple times because we ran our mouths and we weren't going to sit back and take it. And now, Florida Department of Law Enforcement is one of the top in the country. Our DCF Child Family Services now is one of the best in the country when it used to not be that way. Sometimes pushback has to happen to make change. And when you make a little bit of a noise, that's how you get it done. This investigation shouldn't have been blown off as nothing burgers in the beginning. And then maybe it wouldn't have took so long to catch the guy. And then you're going to come out and tell us because it was a misfiled tip. Come on, man. Maybe it was, but you need to own that as well. And don't come out with your shadiness about it, Doug Carter, and blame us. So aggravating. Yes, pre-consist. We heard that about the articles being removed from the websites. We talked about that in the beginning of the stream. Oh, I gotta catch back up.
Yeah, there's a lot of catching up. That's good.
Yeah, teen girls do run away, but families need to be listened to. Too many times women and young girls in this country are just chalked up to, oh, they walked away. Oh, that grown mother, she walked away from her life and left all her babies and her husband behind. She just, no, 9 times out of 10, the husband killed her. And we find that out later. So we got to stop doing that. And not just, it's too easy to say, oh, they just ran away. Or, oh, are you sure she didn't just give up on her life and walk out and leave everybody? We got to stop doing that. It's not fair. I don't know about that statistic. Florida has the highest rate of teen girls running away. I'd beg to differ about that, probably. I live in Northwest Florida. I'm not down there in Central and South. We're different beast. I promise you we are. Police can have all the investigations. They got many cases, but to each and every family member, theirs is the ones that matter. That's right. You can change legislation. You can assist families. I mean, and today we have a missing girl here in my hometown, Tiffany Daniels. Tiffany's been missing for years and years and years. We've never stopped looking for her. And lo and behold, I've talked to her mother. I've talked to the private investigators on the case. I've talked to the private investigators on the case. Today I was sitting outside going over the ins and outs of today's case, and lo and behold, there comes on my YouTube stream a channel who went and ran another story on Tiffany's case, and I was so glad to see it. Because we know Tiffany didn't walk away from her life. Something happened to her, and we don't know where she's at to this day. And when you talk to those family members and what they go through and the years of not knowing where their family members are, and it's so easy to say, hey, they just walked out, get over it. And in order for her to get any of the case files law enforcement has, she has to declare her daughter dead, and she's not ready to do that yet. So there needs to be some change with the way they handle these missing young women and mothers cases, because it's not fair anymore. Yes, Tiffany's case, I do plan to present it on my channel in depth, and I think her mother is willing to come and talk to us about it and let us hear about Tiffany and who she was. Tiffany was a beautiful soul. And unfortunately, the roommate Tiffany had, who was the last person to see her and who might have been responsible, he's no longer with us. He died of natural causes. But someone drove Tiffany's car across the Pensacola Beach Bridge. Toll booth captured it. Can't see who's driving it. And they parked it out near the parking lot, the last parking lot before you hit Fort Pickens, and they abandoned that car there. It was found days later by a civilian on a bicycle. And then law enforcement put it on back of a truck and towed it all the way back over into town and dropped it in the impound yard, and it sits right there exposed to the elements to this day. To this very day. At least in Crystal Rogers' case, when they released her car to her family, her father, Tommy, preserved that car. To this day, that car is still preserved in case they could get any more evidence out of it. There's just a lot of things that could be done differently by law enforcement. And I could go on and on about that for days and days and days. We just got to stop it and do better. Joe, you still with us? Did I talk too much?
Nope, you're good. You're all good. I'm just listening. Preach it.
I'm so tired of it, with law enforcement getting away with those kind of things. I started smoking weed at a pretty young age. Never led me to other drugs, and I never ran away from home. Never.
It led you to some salty opinions.
It damn sure did. I was born with those. I get it from my mama. I get that from my mama. My mama would tell me, you better come home, girl, and tell me everything that went down, the good or bad or the ugly. I need to know. And don't think I didn't. I had that kind of mom, thank God. She might whip my ass in a minute, but she's going to hear me out.
So the very last thing that happened with Deputy Catron was he was asked by OJ, so were you eventually pulled off of road duty and moved to another duty? And he said yes. He was moved to investigate tips called into the tip line for Abby and Libby. And he was asked were they newer tips, and he said no, they're older tips that were going through and trying to process all the tips. Did you ever investigate any tips for Richard Allen? No.
Mm-hmm. So for 5 years, the sketch was out, the video was out, and nobody ever called the tip line to say, hey, that could be the guy at the CVS. I think he looks a little bit like him, maybe even sounds a little bit like that voice we hear y'all put out. Nobody from the bar where the sketch was up, where he shot pool, ever once called in a tip. I don't care how well I know you. If I think you could be that guy, I'm going to call that tip in. That's
Yeah,
just
I
me.
mean, how many thousands of tips were called in on other people who have no connection to this case?
Yeah, and where they all looked at, I mean, they said they was pouring through all those tips and all the investigative hours, but it's just, I think a lot of us find it odd that not one person ever in those 5 years said, hey, that even secretly call it in as a private, an unanimous, anonymous tip, you don't have to give your name and all that good information out. But yeah, it's weird that nobody ever did.
Just the one. 5 years
Yeah,
later.
5 years later. Well, they found the tip that was actually Rick Allen saying, yes, I was there.
Right.
No one's disputing the man was there. No one's disputing what he said he was wearing that day. Not even Rick Allen. That's never been disputed. I was there. But then they find the tip 5 years later when they decided to go back to the beginning because they were getting nowhere. And we got Doug Carter over to my, it's going to be solved before I retire. I know we're getting closer. No, you weren't convinced of that because you didn't have nothing to go on until you found that tip. And Richard Allen was arrested not long after you found the tip. It ain't like you found it and 2 years later you arrested him. No, y'all pretty much got that going right after you found the tip. So again, if he really is your guy and you can prove it, I need you to answer why y'all did that. How did that happen? And make sure you don't ever let that happen again. So unfair.
What a day.
You're probably exhausted. You've been up since so early, because you had to travel over there to the courthouse and wait in line and all the things you had to go through this morning. You're probably exhausted.
You reckon?
Yeah. And you probably need to eat. And if you don't, Butterfly and I will be on your ass about eating a decent meal.
I had some pizza. It's all good.
Good for you.
I walked out of the courthouse a little after 5, and I could smell the Delphi Pizza King. I was like, oh my God, I so want to go in there and have some Delphi Pizza King. And
I've heard it's good.
Pizza King is the best. Pizza King is the best. And the best of the best Pizza Kings are Arnie's in Lafayette. So if anybody out there happens to be in Lafayette for the trial or for any other reason, if you don't go to Arnie's, you're going to be banned from Lafayette in the future. It's the best pizza.
We don't have that here.
Yeah, no, nobody does. Pizza Kings are like unique
to
Indiana.
Okay, that's cool.
So they put the toppings all the way out to the edge. Like there's no crust except on the very bottom. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Except on the very bottom. Yeah. And the ground sausage. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
At pre-consent, we are, if I'm saying that correctly, we're right there with you. I am, at least. I feel the same way. Well, Joe, whenever you're ready to wrap things up, we will let you get on with your night. We know you are exhausted. There's been a lot to go through and so much more we can cover. And so far as we know, there's a half a day for court tomorrow because they will be holding court on Saturday. They do plan
Yep.
to go in. Okay.
Yep. And I'm not planning on going and standing in the cold for 5 hours to get into court for 3 hours, or maybe not get
Yeah.
to court for 3 hours.
Yeah. Well, we can count on, Lawyer Lee and Andrea Burkhart trying to get in.
Yes.
I know that earlier Andrea was live, so anybody who wants to go check out her channel on the replay and get her account from the day, you go do that. I would recommend it. Lawyer Lee is another one. She's really good. She was in there today, but from what I was able to find out, she did make it in as well. So, and like I all day long while Joe was there trying to get into the courthouse and take all these good notes for us about what was happening, I was here at home getting all the notes in from this morning's testimony, and taking it from the accounts of those who were in the courtroom. So we understand the need to go and look at the various, things that are out there. I just, we want the media to be able to report this accurately, and it's so hard because the judge isn't allowing us anything, no audio, no video, and all the things that she's doing to keep everybody out of there. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
It doesn't.
Allison Mata. Now, Allie was there. I thought Allie was there yesterday with Bob. I don't know if Allie
They're
was
both
back
there.
there.
They're
Was
both
she there
there.
today? Okay,
She
I
was
thought
not. She was not in the courtroom. She's there in Delphi. So
well, that
she's.
makes sense because they were running some Sarah Boone stuff this morning, and I thought, well, how in the heck? I thought they were both in Indiana. At
They are.
Island.
They are.
Okay.
Yes, they're both down here. So he did a live last night, and she met him like on his way around the courthouse. She's like, "Stop doing a live. Stop doing a live." And she's like, "All right." He's like, "All right, I gotta obey the boss." So he
Yeah.
ended his live. But I did meet Lawyer Lee today, and she said she was going to give me a shout out on her live. So we'll
Oh,
see.
awesome! I'll have to go check Lee out because I do follow Lee. I've listened to her for quite a while. Like I said earlier, she's good.
Yes, she's so smart. Oh my gosh, she's so smart. And
She's sharp.
I kept looking at her and I'm like, God, I know this lady. I know this lady. God, I know this lady. And she was in line with us and she wasn't that far away from me, especially for the afternoon session. And I know her. And then finally she sat 2 seats down from me in the afternoon session. I was like, now I know you. Oh, Andrea. She and Andrea like teamed up to look at notes from the first session before the break. And
yeah.
And then so I got to meet Andrea Burkhart too, and I got to shake her hand.
Nice. So, okay, Allie was there today, and she'll be attending tomorrow. The Matas were heading. Allison said the coroner is up tomorrow. Okay, I was wondering who was going to be able to.
Allie was there. Oh, I must have missed her because I saw Bob, but I didn't see her.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering who would be testifying in the morning. Because I haven't, like this evening, I've been on the live here, so I haven't looked at what's all happened. So that's interesting. I was wondering when the coroner would be brought up there.
So that's the coroner. That was the coroner in 2017. It was the young kid
that didn't take the body temps of the victims.
Yeah. Oof. Gosh
Yeah.
darn, that makes me want to be there, but that doesn't make me want to camp out in 36-degree weather overnight.
Right. Yeah, it's a little rough to do all that. I mean, goodness.
The struggle is real, but oh my gosh, I honestly want to kind of be there for that.
Yeah, it is a struggle. I would imagine I would be going through that struggle as well if I was able to be there close enough to get there. I'd be like, do I go? Do I don't? Oh man, I would be fighting myself.
He's working at a local diesel shop. So he is a diesel mechanic right now in Lafayette. So I can just go interview him anytime, right? Like I can walk into his place of business and be like,
the coroner's a diesel mechanic?
Yes. Yep.
You go.
True story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of like that coroner over there in Idaho. Jesus Christ. Lord.
It's didn't I send you his Facebook picture? or
I
his
think
Facebook
so.
account.
I think you
Yeah,
did. Yeah, I
yeah,
think you did. Mm-hmm.
yeah. He's like, this corner business is not my shit. I'm out. He's like, I'm gonna go work on diesels, diesel engines.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you guys, Butterfly has dropped those links in the chat. So go check those accounts out and
Yep.
get their take and perspective as well. We can't ever have too many, you know, and we trust them. They're very Andrea's great. I have followed her for a while because she did a lot in the Koberger case. And like I said, Lawyer Lee does a lot in the Crystal Rogers case, another case I follow. So I'm very familiar with both of them. And of course, Defense Diaries, I've been following for quite a while on Twitter and here on YouTube and
Yep.
listening
Allie's
to their
live now.
content.
Go check that out when you're done here.
Oh, is
If
she?
I,
Oh, okay.
yep. If I knew how to portal it, I would portal it, but I still have to research
Right.
it. I'm just
Yeah.
baby steps. Baby steps.
Baby steps. We're
All
getting
right.
there. We're getting there.
Thanks
Everybody,
everybody for joining us.
yes, we do appreciate you guys coming in and hanging out with us. I was reading the last comment that just come up. We appreciate you guys coming in and chilling out with us and listening, and engaging. I love to read the comments and hear what you guys have to say.
Salty, thanks so much for coming up with me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm gonna go too. I got a kiddo that just got home and one about to be home, and I haven't seen him all week, so
All right.
I'm gonna be
Go give
being
your
mom
family
for a
a
little
hug.
while.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go get it.
All right, guys. Have a great night, and we'll be back over the weekend at some point to talk more.
Yep. Ciao all.
I'll
Peace
probably
out.
schedule a live tomorrow at some point. All right. Good night, guys.